Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How was your holiday? Drop a comment down below and let me know. As for me, I'm really grateful for everything this past year brought, and most of all, for all the love and support you've continued to show the channel. Thank you so much for sharing so many of your mysterious experiences with us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. So, let me tell you about three friends, traveling sales guys, who spent more nights on the road than at home. Back then, they were always bouncing between provinces for work. After a long day of pitching products and chasing orders, they had this routine: find somewhere to eat, have a few drinks, laugh a lot, then crawl back to the hotel and do it all again the next day. The three of them were named Korn, Jai, and Neron. And on the night this happened, only Neron stayed sober. Korn and Jai got properly tipsy, the kind of drunk where everything is funny and your brain stops doing its job. So Neron, being the responsible one, offered to drive them back. On the way, someone groaned, "Bathroom, now." So they pulled into a gas station close to midnight. At the time, Thailand was in one of those energy-saving phases. Fuel pumps would shut down before midnight. The stations would feel half asleep after hours, but the little convenience store inside still stayed open, and sometimes there'd be a tiny food spot serving late-night bowls of something comforting. This place was dim, not pitch black, but enough that the shadows felt heavy. They parked near a small restaurant inside the station, and right by the entrance stood one of those wooden greeting statues, carved like a traditional Thai woman, hair in a bun, hands pressed together in a Y, the kind that's meant to welcome you. Now, Jai was the problem. He was drunk and had this talent for saying the dumbest thing possible at the worst time. He stumbled right up to the statue, leaned in like it could hear him, and grabbed it right at the chest like it was a person. Then he slurred something filthy, like, "Hey, beautiful, come help me in the bathroom." And he laughed like he'd just invented comedy. Korn laughed too, because of course he did. Neron didn't laugh. He just sighed, the tired kind of sigh that says, "I'm surrounded by idiots." They split up to use the restroom. Korn and Jai were in and out fast, but Neron took longer, washing his hands properly, checking his phone, probably taking a moment to pray for patience. And while Neron was still inside, Jai got that mischievous look. You know the one. The "I'm about to do something stupid and I'm going to regret it" look. He waddled back to the entrance, grabbed the wooden statue with a grunt, because those things are heavier than they look, and dragged it over to the restroom area. Then he placed it right in front of the stall door Neron was using. He sprinted away, giggling, nearly tripping over his own feet. So when Neron finally opened the door and stepped out, there it was, a carved wooden woman standing inches from his face in the dark. Neron screamed. Like a real scream. "What the? Ghost!" And Korn and Jai lost it. They were bent over, wheezing, tears in their eyes, slapping the wall like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. Once Neron realized what it was, his face went tight with anger. He marched over, grabbed the statue, and shoved it back where it belonged, right in front of the restaurant entrance. Then he turned around and snapped at them. Low voice, serious. "Enough. Don't touch things like that." Korn muttered an apology. Jai pretended to be sorry, but you could tell he still thought it was hilarious. Neron, still annoyed, went into the convenience store and bought a couple things. Water, maybe snacks. Then they all got back into the truck and drove off. And that should have been the end of it. It wasn't. They were approaching a red light, a quiet stretch of road, barely any traffic. Neron slowed the truck to a stop, and then, bang! A violent crash hit the back of the pickup, loud enough that all three of them jerked forward. Neron twisted around in his seat. Korn leaned over and looked out the back window. Jai, drunk but suddenly very awake, craned his neck. And there, in the bed of the pickup truck, was the wooden welcome statue. Not standing neatly either. It was knocked over, Its body sprawled against the cab like it had been thrown there hard enough to slam into the roof. The inside of the truck went ice cold. Naran's first instinct was rage. He whipped around and shouted at Jai, "Did you do this?" But Jai's face was wrong. Not mischievous, not amused. He looked pale, sober pale. "I didn't," he said, almost whispering. "I swear to you, I didn't touch it. I've been sitting here." And Naran believed him, because Jai didn't look like a guy caught in a prank. He looked like a guy who'd just seen something that rewired his soul. They sat there at the red light, frozen, not even noticing when it turned green. Finally, Naran said the only thing that made sense, even though it made no sense at all. "We're going back." So he turned the truck around and drove straight back to that gas station. When they pulled in, Jai refused to get out. "No," he said immediately. "Nope, I'm staying here." He clutched the door handle like the parking lot was an ocean and the truck was the only boat. So Naran and Korn climbed out, walked to the back, and grabbed the statue. Up close, it looked normal. Just carved wood, painted face, hands together, a little weather-worn, nothing special. They carried it back to the restaurant entrance and set it down where it had been. Then they turned to leave. And that's when they heard it. A sharp little sound. Pop. Then, soft, unmistakable movement on the concrete. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Something rolled down the small steps toward them. Naran's heart jumped into his throat. Korn leaned forward slowly, like his body was afraid to commit to seeing what it already suspected. It was the statue's head. The head had come loose and rolled down like a dropped coconut. For a moment, they just stared. And honestly, at first, Naran tried to rationalize it. Maybe it cracked when it slammed into the truck bed. Maybe the joint was already weak. Maybe the fall did it. He swallowed hard, picked up the head with both hands, and reattached it carefully, like he was handling something sacred. When he finished, they stepped back. The statue stood there again, perfectly upright in the dim light. Hair in a bun, traditional dress, hands pressed together. Still. Quiet. Naran and Korn started backing away, keeping their eyes on it, because neither of them trusted turning their backs anymore. And then, the statue blinked. Not once, twice. Slow and clear, like it was letting them know, "Yes, you saw that." Naran didn't scream this time. He didn't even speak. He and Korn just turned and ran, full sprint, back to the truck. Jai saw their faces and didn't ask a single question. Naran slammed the gear into drive and they sped out of the station like it was on fire. The next morning, Jai stayed in the hotel, hungover and oddly quiet, like his body had survived the night, but his mind was still stuck there. Naran and Korn went to meet a client, did their work, tried to act normal. But the whole time, it sat in the back of their thoughts like a stone. What did we see? So later that day, in broad daylight, they drove back to the same gas station. Same restaurant, same entrance. And the statue was there. But something was different. At the base of it, there were offerings, fresh-looking ones, food, sweets, and a bottle of bright red syrup. Korn crouched down, staring at it like it might explain everything. Then he went inside and asked one of the staff gently, "Why do you put offerings out there?" The staff looked at him like he'd asked why they breathe. Korn hesitated, then admitted, carefully, quietly, "Last night, we saw it blink, and it ended up in our truck." The reaction was immediate. You know how it is. Once you say something like that in Thailand, it's like lighting a match in dry grass. Staff and a couple customers hurried outside and started looking at the truck's license plate, whispering, pointing, saying numbers to each other. Because to a lot of people, anything strange tied to a vehicle can mean lottery luck. Naran and Korn didn't mention Jai's crude joke. They left that part out. They just stood there, feeling small. Later, when the lottery results came out, the winning number matched their plate. Exactly. And here's the strange part. None of them bought a ticket. Not one. Because whatever luck that was, it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a warning they didn't deserve to cash in. And one more thing. Because after this happened, they couldn't stop noticing those statues everywhere. Someone later told them another story. They said they stayed at a hotel with one of those same wooden greeting statues near the hallway. Late at night, they heard a sound outside their door. Pock, 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 like wood tapping the floor. They opened the door, and they swore the statue was moving down the hallway. Not running, not walking, hopping, still in its prayer pose, hands pressed together, bouncing like a stiff wooden frog across the tiles. Pock, pock, pock. So, have you ever seen those wooden welcome statues? If you've seen one, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And hey, maybe it's just a story. Maybe it's coincidence, imagination, alcohol, the dark playing tricks. Thai people believe deeply, sometimes in spirits, sometimes in luck, sometimes in things you can't prove, but you also can't dismiss. And sometimes, when people honor something enough, it starts to feel like it's watching back. But don't worry, not every wooden statue is haunted. At least, that's what we tell ourselves. So, I don't tell this story to freak you out. I tell it because it's one of those memories that stuck to me, you know? Like it left a thumbprint. When I was 13, I was in a really heavy, lonely place. I was dealing with depression, acting out, flirting with anything that felt dark, just because I didn't know where else to put all that pain. I didn't fully believe in spiritual stuff, not in a committed way, but I was disruption enough to keep one eye open, if that makes sense. The thing is, my family always had little quirks. My mom, Marisol, could read people's emotions like a weather report, and she'd have dreams that came true later. Small things, but specific enough to make you pause. My older brother, Eli, used to talk about seeing things in the house, like shadows that didn't belong to anyone. Me? I never knew what my thing was, but my mom always warned me, very seriously, not to mess with anything malicious. She'd say, "You're like a lighthouse, you draw things in." I'd roll my eyes, but it always sat somewhere in the back of my mind. And then that Christmas, I got a Ouija board. Not from my mom, just to be clear. It was one of those gifts that slips through because someone thinks it's a joke. And at 13, I thought it was either going to be nothing, or it was going to be something big enough to finally prove everybody wrong. For about a week, nothing happened. I played with it alone in my room, stupidly, impatiently, doing everything you're not supposed to do. I'd rush, ask a question, laugh at myself, push it too hard, treat it like a toy. And honestly, looking back, that was the whole problem. I was messy and open and miserable. I was like an unlocked door in a storm. One night, I decided to do it right. I followed the instructions as closely as I could, took a deep breath, and called out, quietly, but with intent. And it was immediate. The temperature dropped so fast it felt unreal, like someone opened a freezer inside my bedroom. The sound changed too, like when you put on noise-canceling headphones and the world gets weirdly muffled. Then I heard this high ringing, sharp and loud, like it was inside my skull. And then the planchette slid to yes. I swear to you, the second it moved, my whole body went into panic. I wasn't excited anymore. I wasn't curious. I was terrified. I yanked my hands away and ended it in the dumbest way possible. Something like, okay, bye. And I shoved the board away like that was going to undo it. But the air didn't go back to normal. It got colder. Every hair on my arms stood straight up. And then, I know how this sounds, I do. I looked up at the mirror across my room, and I saw something behind me. Not like a full, clear movie scene, more like a shape that shouldn't have been there. Too tall, wrong angles, the kind of silhouette that makes your brain scream before you even understand what you're seeing. And the part that still makes my stomach twist is that it felt like it was coming closer, like it was leaning into the room with its arms open, like it wanted me. I ran. I sprinted down the hall in my socks, almost ate it on the stairs, and I barged into the living room trying to explain to my dad and my stepmom, Tessa, what happened. They laughed, like full-on, "You're watching too many scary videos," laughing. My dad, Reed, was the type who didn't believe in anything he couldn't hold in his hands. He called it nonsense, but even he made me pack the board up and bring it to my mom's house when I went there a couple days later. Like he didn't believe it, but he also didn't want it around. When I got to my mom's, she took one look at me and her expression changed. She didn't say, "What did you do?" She said, "Something's attached." Like she could feel it the way you feel a pressure shift before a storm. But I was so scared of disappointing her that I lied. I told her I was just stressed. I hid the board in my bag and tried to pretend I hadn't brought a whole nightmare into her home. That week, things got strange. All of us, my mom, my stepdad Jonah, even my brother, started having these dreams. Not identical, but close enough to make my skin crawl. There was a woman in them, mouth stretched too wide, like her jaw didn't fit right. She'd loom over us like she was leaning down from a ceiling corner. And the worst part was that she was screaming, but there was no sound, like watching someone scream underwater. We'd all wake up around the same time at night, too. Different rooms, same moment, like something nudged the whole house awake. And the dogs, our dogs wanted nothing to do with me. They'd avoid me, hide under chairs, leave the room when I walked in. They acted like I smelled wrong. My mom started cleansing the house the way she always did when things felt heavy. Windows open, prayers, getting rid of old objects that felt off. She threw out random stuff that had been sitting around forever, like she was trying to remove every possible hook. Finally, after she confronted me, because I genuinely hadn't eaten properly in days, I broke. I sat at the kitchen table, shaking, pulled out the board, and told her everything. She didn't yell. She didn't shame me. She looked relieved almost, like, "Okay, we can deal with this now. Now I know what I'm fighting." She set up what she called a protected space. I'm not going to describe it like it's a how-to, because that's not what this is. But she took it seriously, like a mother putting on armor for her kid. She made it clear we weren't playing anymore. This was about closing a door I'd opened carelessly. Everyone left the house except me and Jonah. My hands were sweating so badly I could barely keep them steady. We put our fingertips on the planchette, and I remember thinking, "Please let this be nothing. Please let me have imagined it." It wasn't nothing. The planchette jerked hard, erratic, like it had a temper. It tried to slide off the board. It bounced through letters too fast to make sense. It did that thing people warn you about, racing, spiraling, acting like it wanted to break rules just to prove it could. Jonah kept his voice calm and firm. He spoke like you'd speak to a stray dog that's baring its teeth. No fear, no cruelty, just authority. He told it to leave the house, told it to leave me alone, over and over. And then, after a few minutes, it stopped. Just stopped. The silence after was so intense it felt like my ears were ringing again. We sat there, waiting for something, anything, like we were holding our breath in a paused room. And then my stomach growled. Not a normal hungry growl, a deep, empty sound like my body suddenly remembered it needed fuel. And I got hit with this wave of hunger so powerful it was almost embarrassing, like I could have eaten the table. My mom came back later, and I devoured a whole pizza like I'd been starved, because I basically had been. I remember looking down and seeing my stomach all bloated and tight, and feeling this sick little thought crawl in. What if it was feeding on me? What if it took something and now it's gone? My mom told me something that still haunts me a little. She said that whole week she couldn't feel me the way she normally could. Like my signal was dim. Like I was still there, but muted. But I'll be honest with you. Even now, when I'm really low, I sometimes catch something in the corner of my eye. A shadow that feels too tall, or a darker patch in a dark room that makes me stare a second longer than I want to. And maybe it's just my brain. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe it's trauma plus a wild 13-year-old memory. But part of me still wonders if that night left something behind. And that's the part I don't know how to explain away. So let me tell you about this place. An old farmhouse out in the country, easily over 100 years old. The kind with creaky floors, thick wooden doors, and that quiet, settled feeling, like it's been watching the seasons roll by forever. A few years back, I ended up there a handful of times because it belonged to my mother-in-law's then-boyfriend's family. Well, technically it was his aunt, Marlene, who lived there. The land had been passed down for generations, and you could feel that history in everything, from the worn porch steps to the way the fields stretched out like they'd always been there. Anyway, the first time we visited, Marlene and her husband Dean casually mentioned, like it was normal dinner conversation, that they thought there was a spirit in the house, mostly down in the cellar. They believed it was an old farm worker who died on the property decades ago. The way they told it, he was helping with a piece of equipment, something like a tractor or a heavy implement, and there'd been an accident. Fast, brutal, the kind of thing you don't really recover from. They said he'd loved the farm, loved the family, and even in death, he didn't seem to want to leave. And here's the part that made my skin prickle. More than once, they'd seen this dark shape in the cellar. Not a person exactly, more like a black smear of a person, an outline that didn't quite belong to the light. They said it would appear near an old wooden rocking chair, almost like it was sitting there. And a couple times, they swore it looked like it was holding something. Once a long-handled tool, like a shovel, and another time something that could have been a gun. Weird detail, right? But then Dean shrugged and said, "That's how he was. Always had a tool in his hand. Always ready." They didn't talk about it like they were scared either. Honestly, they spoke about him with this strange fondness, like he was part of the household, like a quiet guard dog you never see, but you know it's there. Marlene even showed me a video they'd recorded once, because they'd caught something they couldn't explain. They were home alone, no kids running around, no pets inside, and suddenly from upstairs you hear this sharp clink, like a marble or a small ball dropping onto hardwood. Then it starts to roll. Not just once, over and over, like something keeps dropping it, letting it bounce, letting it roll. And it goes on forever. I mean, not a minute or two, closer to an hour, off and on. You can hear them in the video calling out to each other, getting more and more annoyed and confused, and finally, they go upstairs to check. They turn on lights, open doors, look under furniture. Nothing. No ball, no loose object, no reason for it. And the weirdest part is the sound is so clear you'd swear you could reach out and pick it up yourself. Now here's where it got even more interesting. Marlene's nephew, Caleb, grew up in that house. And Caleb would not, under any circumstances, go down into the cellar. You'd think a grown man who'd lived there his whole childhood would be used to it, right? Nope. He'd get to the cellar door and suddenly remember he needed to check something outside. or he had a phone call, or he didn't feel like it. Every single time, like clockwork. And the thing is, he always insisted he'd never seen anything, not once. But his cousin Tessa, who loved stirring the pot, said that was absolutely not true. And what really kept this story stuck in my head is that Marlene and Dean genuinely believed the spirit wasn't harmful. They didn't describe it as angry or cruel, more like protective, territorial maybe, like it cared about the land. They'd point out how their farm never had the problems everyone else did. Neighboring properties dealt with coyotes getting into coops, strange tracks near barns, even trespassers cutting through woods or hunting where they shouldn't. But Marlene and Dean? Nothing. No poachers. No animals messing with their livestock. No weird damage. Dean would just smile, like it was obvious, and say something like, "He's still working, still keeping an eye on things." And the way they said it didn't feel like a spooky campfire tale. It felt like a family truth, something they'd accepted the same way you accept a creaky stair that always groans in the same spot. I'll be honest with you, I never felt unwelcome there, not even a little. If anything, the house felt steady, like it had rules and boundaries, like if you came in with respect, you'd be fine. But still, every time we visited, I'd catch myself glancing toward that cellar door, thinking about that rocking chair in the dark, and wondering if something down there was listening, quietly, patiently, still guarding a farm it refused to leave behind. Hey, so I'm gonna be honest. I feel a little ridiculous saying this out loud, but I also can't keep brushing it off anymore. For the last couple months, like 2.5 give or take, it's felt like something shifted. Like either me and my friends accidentally stepped into something we don't understand, or the land we're living on is holding on to something heavy, something mean, something that doesn't want us here. It kind of started after my grandpa passed. That's the moment my brain keeps circling back to, like a pin stuck in a map. But even right before that, I had these stretches where I felt drained. Not tired, not stressed, more like someone unplugged me and I couldn't charge back up, no matter how much I slept. And then the weird little things started piling up. Gnats everywhere, stink bugs like it was their apartment too, spiders in places that made no sense, and the scratches, the bruises, me and a couple of my friends too. Random marks showing up like we'd bumped into something in the dark, except none of us remembered doing it. Then we started digging around because, of course we did. It turns out there's all this local lore about the property, old family names tied to the land, a woman people still whisper about, some community witch from way back in the 1800s. And right across from our complex, there's this small cemetery owned by her descendants. It's one of those things you can ignore until you can't, and lately, it's been hard to ignore. And then the incidents. That's what really got me. First, my friends moved in. Like my close friends, Nadia and Seth, ended up renting one unit, and my other friend, Rowan, grabbed another. Suddenly, we had 3 apartments in the same complex, all basically our little group. It felt like it was going to be this fun, cozy chapter, you know? Except not long after that, the building right across from Nadia and Seth's place caught fire. Like full-on flames, sirens, the whole thing. Everyone was like, "Wow, freak accident," and we tried to treat it like that. Then Rowan ended up in the ER because their appendix was close to bursting. Emergency surgery. That kind of thing shakes you even when it ends up okay. And then right on the heels of that, Seth got badly injured at work. bad enough that he couldn't keep the job. It was like every time we exhaled, something else hit. For a minute, I told myself, okay, life is just chaotic. Sometimes bad stuff comes in clusters. I tried to be logical. I really did. Then I took a trip down south to visit a friend and clear my head. And honestly, the trip itself was fine. It was the drive back that messed with me. I decided to take a different route home, and it was late. Like that eerie time where it's technically morning, but your body knows it's still night. Somewhere around 2:30 a.m., I crossed into this stretch of highway that felt like it swallowed sound. I pulled into a rest stop just to wake myself up for a minute, and that's when my phone and radio started going completely haywire. My Bluetooth kept disconnecting and reconnecting like it was panicking. Then when I tried to play music, my phone literally called itself, like I was suddenly in a phone call with my own number, and the music started playing through the call audio. I remember just staring at the screen like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I shut everything off, got back on the road, and somehow my GPS settings flipped to avoid tolls. I didn't touch it. I know I didn't. But it rerouted us off the main way and deeper into these back roads. And right when I turned onto it, 3 deer sprinted across in front of the car. I slammed the brakes, didn't hit them, and they ended up on the other side of the road. All 3 stopped, turned, looked right at us, and I swear to you, swear, their eyes reflected this sharp red glow, not the normal white shine, not yellow, red. I drove like a grandma after that, barely breathing, because the road was slick and twisting and my hands were shaking on the wheel. When we finally got back to the highway, we passed a deer that had been absolutely destroyed, like something had hit it and kept going. It was horrifying. And then, from the back seat, Nadia, who had been quiet the whole time, goes, I didn't want to say anything, but there was someone walking behind us on that road, like on foot, and they followed us until we reached the end. I remember my stomach dropping, because nobody else saw them, but Nadia wasn't joking. She looked pale, real fear. Not long after that, back home, we got hit with another disaster. I was out running errands, just normal shopping, nothing special, and my phone rings. It's Rowan, frantic, saying there are cops and fire trucks everywhere at the complex. I'm thinking, okay, another building fire, which already sounds insane to say twice. But when I got the details, it wasn't just a fire. A small plane crashed near the complex and exploded. Not in a field miles away, near us, like within shouting distance, close enough that I could picture exactly where it happened. That was the moment I stopped being able to pretend this was all just normal bad luck. And then I worked this summer camp for my old high school marching band, helping out, long days, lots of kids, lots of chaos. We ended up with a nasty COVID outbreak through the group, and that alone was stressful and exhausting. But one night, after everyone was asleep, I stepped outside for air around 3 a.m. It was quiet, like the world had been turned down. And then I heard knocking, like hard knocks, not wind, not branches, knocking from somewhere close. And after that, voices, like people talking, softly, not far off. I went to look. I checked the corners, the shadows, the spots sound usually bounces from. And there was nothing. No one. Just that thick emptiness that makes you feel stupid for being scared, and somehow even more scared because you know what you heard. And today was the cherry on top. We woke up to another building on fire in our complex. Another one. At this point, it's like the universe is doing it on purpose just to prove a point. And after all that, we tried to do something normal. grab lunch, breathe, act like regular people. We pull into a McDonald's and the whole area is locked down. There's a guy pulled over, 3 cops around him, and it turns into a standoff. Roads blocked, sirens, everyone trapped in place, just watching, waiting. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Because when you stack it all up, fires, the plane crash, the injuries, the sickness, the creepy late night stuff, the animal thing, the marks showing up on our bodies, the bugs, the history of the land, it starts to feel like there's a thread connecting it all. And I don't know if that thread is a curse, or an entity, or some kind of hex, or just the cruelest run of coincidence I've ever seen. But it feels attached, like it found us and decided we're its people now. I've tried a couple protection things, small stuff, things I know, things that usually make me feel grounded. But lately, I just feel like I'm standing in the rain with an umbrella full of holes. Okay, so this happened to me when I was a kid, maybe 9-ish, somewhere around there. My memory's a little fuzzy on the exact age, but I remember how it felt like it was yesterday. I'd just gotten out of martial arts practice. Karate, I think it was. Could have been something similar. Either way, I was exhausted, sweaty, and in a rotten mood because the instructor was one of those adults who acts tough just because kids can't talk back. You know the type. My older brother Adrian was supposed to pick me up. He rolls in driving my parents' car, and his girlfriend at the time, Melanie, is sitting in the front seat. I didn't really like her back then. Not because she did anything super awful. I just got this vibe like she was always judging me. So I slid into the back seat and went quiet. The drive home was short and painfully awkward. No music, barely any talking. Just the sound of tires on the road and me staring out the window, counting streetlights. When we got to our apartment, Adrian dropped me off and then immediately left again with Melanie. And suddenly, I'm alone. Here's the thing. I was a kid who loved creepy stories, horror videos, all that stuff. Which is funny, because I was also terrified of the dark. Like, genuinely terrified. My brain had this messed up little rule where I could only fall asleep if someone else was in the room, because I figured if something came in, it would take them first. I know, kid logic is unhinged. So I open the apartment door and do that panicked scramble for the light switch, like I'm defusing a bomb. The light by the entry clicks on, but everything beyond that little area is pitch black. And I just freeze there, sitting by the door, hugging my knees, listening to nothing. Let me explain the layout because it matters. When you walk in, the living room is off to the right. Straight ahead are the stairs going up. And to the left is this hallway that runs to 3 rooms. At the very end is the bathroom. Along the hallway, the kitchen door is on the right side, and on the left is my dad's little office. And that office? Oh man, that room always freaked me out. It was filled with shelves and random stuff and shadows, and as a kid, I was convinced a hand could reach out and grab you from literally anywhere. Like the room was just built for nightmares. So I'm sitting there by the door, trying to be brave, and then, bang. It comes from the kitchen, not like a gentle sound, like a drawer being slammed shut, hard. I whip my head toward the kitchen door. It's closed. I just stare at it like if I look away, something will sprint out. A minute passes. Bang! Another one. Then another. And then it starts escalating so fast my brain can barely keep up. There's crashing, like drawers yanked open and thrown. I hear what sounds like metal clattering, like utensils tossed into the air. Then this sharp sound that I swear was glass breaking. And there's this weird buzzing noise too, like some appliance kicking on and off, on and off. It was like a full-on fight was happening in there, like the kitchen was throwing a tantrum. And I'm just stuck by the door, paralyzed. My whole body felt cold and heavy at the same time. I didn't even want to breathe too loud. I grab my crappy little phone and call my mom, whisper yelling into it like, "Mom, you need to come home right now." She's like, "What happened?" And I'm trying not to cry while I'm saying, "Something is in the kitchen. Something is throwing things. Please come home." Good news. She believes I'm scared and says she's coming, which might as well have been 100 years. So I'm sitting there in a tight little ball beside the door, basically doing the world's saddest, quietest panic attack while the kitchen keeps going, crashing, banging, clattering, like it's trying to prove a point. I remember thinking, if I move, it'll notice me. So I don't move. And then finally I hear keys, the lock, the door opening. My mom steps inside, and the second she does, silence. Not even that normal apartment building quiet. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. I start crying immediately, trying to explain between sobs. My mom puts her bag down, gives me this worried look, and then, very calmly, she walks straight to the kitchen like she's about to catch someone red-handed. And I follow behind her, like 2 steps back, clinging to her like a baby duck. She opens the kitchen door, and nothing. No mess, no broken glass, no drawers pulled out, nothing on the floor. Actually, this is the part that still makes my skin crawl. The kitchen looked cleaner than I remembered it being, like someone had straightened everything up, lined things nicely, made it neat. My mom just stands there, confused. Then she looks back at me like, "Are you sure?" And I'm standing there shaking like, "Yes, I swear on my life, it was going crazy in here." Nobody really believed me after that. Not fully. My brother brushed it off. My sister teased me. I even blamed Adrian's girlfriend, Melanie, because in my head I was like, if she wasn't there, he would have stayed and I wouldn't have been alone. Again, kid logic. I was desperate for someone to blame. But my mom, she didn't truly take it seriously until later in life, when she got more religious and started being more cautious about spiritual stuff. After that, she'd bring it up occasionally like, maybe you weren't imagining that. And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't. Because whatever that was, it scared me half to death. And then it cleaned up after itself. Like, thanks, I guess? Terrifying, but very considerate. So this story actually belongs to my cousin, but it's one of those things that hit our whole family so hard, we all ended up knowing every detail. My cousin had come to the US from Mexico to study abroad, and at first, everything felt exciting and normal. She stayed with our aunt and uncle in this cozy, totally ordinary house. No creepy history, no strange vibes, nothing like that. The house was full, too. My aunt, my uncle, their 2 kids, my grandma, and my cousin. I'll call her Lena. Lena was the kind of person who could make friends in 5 minutes. She was social, charming, always laughing, just easy to be around. For the first few months, she was doing great. School, friends, the whole new country adventure. Nothing stood out as wrong. Then, slowly, like so slowly you don't notice at first, she started changing. She stopped going out as much, started saying no to invites. Then she began skipping class here and there. She ate less. She was irritated all the time, like she was carrying something heavy and didn't want anyone to touch it. My aunt thought, okay, homesick. Totally reasonable. New country, new culture, missing family. So she backed off a little and tried to give Lena space. Still, my aunt quietly checked the obvious things. No drugs, no drinking, nothing like that. Lena wasn't getting into trouble. She was just fading. And then one night, more like early morning, everything snapped into focus. It was somewhere around 2:30 a.m., that dead quiet hour where the house feels like it's holding its breath. Lena suddenly burst into my aunt and uncle's bedroom, not knocking, not hesitating, just appearing in the doorway like she'd been chased. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand, and she couldn't get words out at first. She kept trying, but her mouth would open and nothing came out. My aunt and uncle sat her down, tried to calm her, asked what happened, what she saw, what she heard. But Lena just looked terrified in this really raw, almost childlike way. So they did the only thing they could do. They let her sleep in their room that night. In the morning, after everyone had coffee and daylight had returned to the world, my aunt sat Lena down, gently but firmly, and said, "You're telling me what's going on." And that's when Lena finally admitted it. She'd been using a spirit board. Not once, not as a joke at a party. She'd been doing it a lot, in her room, alone, late at night. She told my aunt it started the way these things always start. Curiosity. Something silly. Something she didn't really believe in but wanted to try because it felt spooky and fun. She said at first it was harmless. Little questions, little answers. Nothing that seemed serious. But then it stopped being a game. It became a habit. Then an obsession. She started blowing off friends just to go home and play. She'd stay up until dawn asking questions, and then she'd miss class because she couldn't wake up. When she was outside the house, all she could think about was getting back to her room and putting her hands on the planchette again. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. She said she thought she'd made a friend. Like she genuinely believed whatever was responding was kind, or at least neutral. She talked to it like it was company, like it was something that understood her, until the answers started changing. At first, it was little stuff she tried to explain away. Shadows flickering at the edges of her vision. A whisper she couldn't quite make out. Light tapping against her upstairs window, except her room was on the second floor, so it wasn't like a branch brushing the glass. Then it got worse. Scratching sounds, soft like fingernails, along the wall and the door at night. The shower curtain shifting when she was in the bathroom, even when she was completely alone. Small items disappearing, hair ties, keys, little personal things, then turning up in places she swore she'd already checked. And the whole time, she didn't tell anyone, not a word, because she was embarrassed and scared. And I think deep down, she knew if she said it out loud, it would become real in a way she couldn't control. She did try to stop. She said she tried, but she described it like, once she opened that door, it didn't really close again. Then came the night she ran into my aunt's room. Lena said she was in bed, trying to force herself to sleep, when the tapping started again. Then the scratching. The usual routine, like it was reminding her, I'm still here. And for the first time, she did something different. She started praying. Not just a nervous whisper, like a real prayer from the heart, like she was finally calling for help. And right in the middle of it, her bed started shaking. Not a little tremble, not, maybe I imagined it. She said the whole bed shook so violently the legs bounced on the hardwood, like someone had grabbed the frame and was rattling it in anger. She said she could hear it, wood knocking on wood, over and over, like a warning. She didn't even finish the prayer. She just launched herself out of bed and ran, barefoot, half asleep, heart pounding, straight down the hall to my aunt and uncle. When my aunt heard the full story in daylight, she was furious, like the kind of angry that comes from fear and love mixed together. Because in her mind, Lena hadn't just scared herself. She'd brought something into a house where her kids and her mother were sleeping. And then the practical panic set in. What did you invite in here? And how do we get it out? Not long after that, Lena went back home. School had completely fallen apart by then, which was the whole reason she'd come to stay with my aunt in the first place. It wasn't just one decision, it was mutual. Everyone could tell she wasn't okay, and she needed to be somewhere that felt safe again. From what I heard, nothing paranormal ever happened to anyone else in the house. It was like whatever it was had been focused on her. The spirit board was destroyed. My family says it was burned and thrown out. The room was cleansed and blessed. Windows opened, prayers said, the whole thing. But the part that sits weird with me is this. After she left, we didn't really hear much from her again. And every once in a while, someone in my family will say, quietly, like they don't want to tempt anything, "I hope nothing followed her." Because the truth is, you don't always know what you're inviting in. And you definitely don't always know what it takes to make it leave. So, I want to tell you a ghost story. And honestly, this is the one that made it impossible for anyone to ever talk me out of believing that something is out there. I was 18 when my life cracked open in two directions at once. Fear on one side, freedom on the other. I was still living at home with my mom and my little brother. My dad had died a few years earlier, and the house felt smaller after that. Like grief takes up space you can't redecorate around. On top of that, I was wrestling with being gay in a place and a time that didn't exactly make room for it. This was mid-80s England, working class, northern, and not the sort of town where you casually said, "Oh, by the way, I'm queer," and expected hugs and a cup of tea. I was dating a girl, Hannah, because that's what you did when you were terrified of the truth, but desperate to look normal. Then one night, Hannah and I ended up in a pub, ran into an old mate from school, Callum, and his girlfriend, Rhea. They were all in on the goth alternative scene and said, "We're going to this club, you should come." The club had a reputation, a bit dark, a bit strange, a bit not for everyone. It was like walking into oxygen for the first time. Suddenly, there were people who looked like how I felt inside. People who didn't apologize for being different. Even Hannah liked it, until she met someone else there, and our relationship quietly ended. It hurt, because I did love her in my own way, but it also felt like the universe clearing a path. And that's where I met him, Adrian. Adrian wasn't a romance, not even close. He was a doorway. The first person who made me feel like I didn't have to pretend. We bonded fast. Both of us had lost our dads young, and there's a certain shortcut grief gives you into someone else's life. Within a few weeks, he invited me to a party at his house. Now, Adrian's home life was complicated. His mom used a wheelchair after years of illness, but she was still sharp as a tack and didn't let it stop her from living. A while before I met him, she'd moved out to live with a boyfriend, leaving Adrian alone in their big old family house. Adrian's boyfriend at the time had moved in, but the relationship didn't last. Later, I learned why. Because the house didn't feel empty. At that party, everyone was brilliant, warm, dramatic, hilarious, misfits in the best way. I found my people, and not long after, I started hearing stories about Adrian's ex, Jonah, and how Jonah couldn't cope with what was happening in the house. It started small, they said. A thing missing here, a cupboard left open there, odd knocks, the sense that someone had been in a room when they hadn't. But it escalated, like whatever it was realized it had an audience. And then the big one. Jonah was heading upstairs one night after Adrian had gone to bed, and something he couldn't see, shoved him backwards. He went down the stairs hard. That was it. Jonah never slept there again, not after that, and the relationship collapsed under the weight of fear. By the time I came along, Adrian hated being alone in that house at night. So our little group, Adrian, me, and our friends Imogen and Lewis, started taking turns staying over. There were 3 bedrooms, so it was easy to rotate. The first few nights? Nothing. Just laughter, music, cigarettes, late-night toast, and that sweet feeling of being young and newly unafraid. But then there were little things. We did what people do when they're scared but want to feel brave. We made it funny. We gave it a name. We called it Arthur. And once you name something, you start talking to it like it's a member of the household, which, looking back, might have been a mistake. Not long after that, I finally told my mom I was gay, and it went about as well as you'd imagine. I've been staying at Adrian's more and more, and one afternoon, we popped back to my mom's for some clean clothes and a proper meal. It was spring. My mom even went out to the garden and cut flowers for us to take back. Bright yellow ones, cheerful, almost mocking in how normal they looked. Adrian, bless him, clocked my nerves and said, "I'm going to the shop. You'll do it better if I'm not here." So I called my mom in. She walked in holding the flowers, and I tried to speak. Tried and failed and froze so hard it felt like my throat had glued itself shut. Then I just blurted it. "Mom, I'm gay." Her face changed in a single second. She dropped the flowers like they'd burned her hand, and she said something that still stings when I remember it. Something like, "Why would you tell me that?" Like my truth was a mess I'd chosen to make. I left that day with my bag already packed, and when Adrian came back, he said quietly, "Just move in with me. You're here anyway." So I did, and I swear to you, already like it noticed me moving in, the house woke up again. At first it was daytime stuff, little disturbances. Then one afternoon, around 4, Adrian and I came home from work, and he said, half joking, like calling out to a mate, "All right then, Arthur, give us a proper bang." Instantly, there was a violent crash against the unused living room door, like a boot had kicked it as hard as possible. Not a creak, not settling wood, a thud that made our stomachs drop. We ran to the hallway, expecting to find someone. The front door was locked. No one there. Nothing moved. But even with something that loud, a few minutes later your brain tries to save you. You start wondering if you exaggerated it, if your memory is dramatizing it. That's the strange part. Fear makes you doubt your own senses. Then there was the loft hatch. Every morning, open. We'd shut it, properly. It would be open again the next day, for about a week, like someone up there was listening and grinning. Another night, all of us were downstairs talking when we heard glass smash upstairs. We sprinted up and found the bathroom bulb had shattered in the sink. Only the bulb was in the middle of the ceiling, and the sink was against the wall. Explain that one to me. I heard the tapping above my bed for hours some nights, and once, this one still creeps me out, I heard scraping outside the front window, like someone dragging a stick along the fence slats. On and off for ages, deep into the night. I looked out, but a bush blocked the view. The next morning, there were scratches along the fence. Maybe it was a person. But who does that for hours at 3 in the morning? And yes, we did the Ouija board thing. I know. Scraps of paper, letters, a glass on the table. Very teenagers in a horror film. Most of it felt like nonsense, like someone nudging it. But then we asked its name, and it went straight to Arthur, like it had been waiting. Then it claimed, very specifically, that it knew Adrian's dad from the army, and that it came to frighten us. We laughed it off in the moment, because you have to. But underneath the jokes, we were all carrying this constant low-level dread, like living with a thunderstorm that never fully breaks. I heard a shuffle sound upstairs. Faint. I ignored it. Then again, closer, heavier. So I turned the music off. 2 seconds later, I heard footsteps. Not creaks, not one or two. Proper, deliberate steps, circling around the room above the living room, which was Adrian's bedroom. No carpet up there, just bare floorboards. And it sounded like someone in heavy boots pacing, round and round, like they were building up speed. I didn't go up to check. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I grabbed my keys and left the house so fast I nearly forgot my coat. I walked straight to my workplace and waited for Adrian's shift to end so I wouldn't have to go back alone. When we got home together, everything was normal. Doors locked, windows shut. No sign anyone had been there. Then, just when I thought I was settling into the weirdness, Adrian and Lewis played a prank on me. I'd been ill, didn't want to go out, so they went clubbing and I stayed home alone. Around 2:30 in the morning, they snuck in, crept upstairs, and started stomping like a herd of elephants above me. Then they came charging down the stairs, laughing, threw the living room door open, and burst in like maniacs. I nearly folded myself behind the sofa with a cushion over my head like that was going to save me from anything. They found it hysterical, until they realized I wasn't laughing. They apologized, properly. They hadn't meant to scare me that badly. And here's the thing. A few nights later, something happened that proved it wasn't just them messing about. Adrian, Imogen, and I were in bed, maybe half an hour into trying to sleep, when we heard a gigantic crash downstairs. Not a knock, not a bang. A multi-layered sound like shelves had been shoved over and a whole room had fallen apart. We all shouted to each other, because obviously we'd all heard it, and we armed ourselves in the stupidest, most desperate way. A heavy ornament for Imogen, and for me, I snapped a picture frame and held the broken wood like a weapon. Like that would do anything against whatever we'd been living with. We went downstairs together. Nothing. Not a book out of place. Not a shelf tilted. Not a single item disturbed. We searched the entire house. Then we sat in the kitchen drinking tea with shaking hands, the three of us refusing to admit out loud how terrified we were. We didn't really sleep after that. We just waited for morning like you do when you're a kid and you've had a nightmare. But the house wasn't finished. Later that night, or early morning really, we heard another loud crash. Then footsteps ran up the stairs, stopped on the landing outside Adrian's room, and something breathed 3 times. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Then, this laugh. And I swear to you, it didn't sound human. It sounded like something trying to imitate laughter, like an animal making the shape of a person's joy. We opened the door, crept out, checked again. Nothing. And we didn't go back to bed after that. I lived there for a little over 2 years. Eventually, I met my first proper boyfriend and moved out, partly because I wanted to start a new chapter, and partly because I couldn't live with that constant tension forever. Adrian understood, but I still felt guilty leaving him in that place. Over time, the activity calmed down. It didn't vanish completely, but it faded. Like whatever it was needed the right conditions to get loud. And here's the part that makes it complicated. Adrian changed in the years after. He became paranoid, painfully so. He started believing I was out to harm him, like I was poisoning him or plotting against him. It built slowly, then took over. Eventually, he was diagnosed with a serious disorder. We tried to help. We tried to stay close, but it became too much. He pushed everyone away in the end, and I still wonder, quietly, late at night, if the house was haunted the way people imagine, or if the grief, the loneliness, the upheaval, the energy of everything Adrian had survived, somehow seeped into the walls and took on a life of its own. We never saw a thing. It was always sound, movement, broken objects, that feeling of menace. But it was real, and it wasn't even my only experience. When I got my first flat alone, top floor of a crumbling old Victorian townhouse, I had a few strange moments there too. One night, I was reading in bed and the toilet flushed by itself. Properly flushed. Old high cistern, long chain, and yet nothing was moving, just the cistern refilling like someone had pulled it. Another time, there was a crash in the hallway. One pane of glass in the loft hatch had shattered. In the morning, I found a stone on the stairs. But the only glass panel up in the roof space was still intact. So where did the stone come from? And the last one, middle of the day, quiet house. I was studying, no TV, no music. The heavy mirror above the mantel just dropped off the wall and smashed. When I checked, the chain wasn't broken. The hook was still on the wall. So tell me, how does that happen? Weird, isn't it? So, there's this memory I carry around that's so sharp, it almost feels like a photograph. I was really little, maybe 5, give or take, and even now, I can close my eyes and I'm right back there. It was one of those sticky summer nights where the air doesn't move and the house feels like an oven. Where I grew up, it was normal to drag beds out onto this little covered porch area, almost like a veranda, because it was the only way to breathe. That night, my mom and dad slept inside, but I begged to sleep outside with my grandpa. I thought it sounded fun, like an adventure. Yeah, I regretted it pretty fast. The veranda sat a few steps away from the house, close enough that you could see the doorway, but far enough that it felt separate. The 2 beds were set side by side, facing the entrance. Grandpa was out cold, the kind of deep sleep where you look peaceful and completely unreachable. Me? I was wide awake, flipping over and over, trying to get comfortable, listening to every tiny sound the night makes when you're a kid and the dark feels alive. I wanted to run inside so badly, but I was too scared to stand up and cross that little stretch of darkness alone. So I just lay there, stiff as a board, telling myself I'd fall asleep any second. Then I saw someone come out of the house. At first, I felt this rush of relief, like, thank God. I assumed it was my dad. The shape was adult-sized, broad shoulders, moving like someone who belonged there. The figure walked out and started heading off to the left, and I whispered his name, soft, but not so soft he wouldn't hear. The figure stopped, and then it turned its head toward me. And in that exact moment, my whole body went cold, because something in me just knew, before my brain could even form the thought, that it wasn't my dad. It was the same height, same general outline, but the feeling was wrong. Like when you pick up a familiar object and realize it isn't the same weight it's supposed to be. It stood there for a couple seconds, perfectly still. Then it started walking toward the veranda. The closer it got, the more my eyes adjusted, and that's when I realized what I was actually seeing. It looked human in the simplest way. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, the proportions of an adult. But where a face should have been, there was nothing. Just darkness. Except for the eyes. 2 points of red light. Not like reflected light, not like someone holding a flashlight, more like they were lit from inside. Steady, quiet, watching. I couldn't move. I couldn't even sit up. I was frozen so hard it felt like my muscles forgot how to work. All I could do was stare. The way it moved is hard to explain. Smooth, almost gentle, like it was trying not to make noise, trying not to startle me. It came right up to my bed and just stood there, looking down at me for what felt like forever. And the strange thing is, it didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me. I know how that sounds, but there was no lunging, no reaching, no sudden motion. It was just there, present, observing. After a while, it crouched down beside the bed, like someone resting on their heels. Its arms settled loosely over its knees, almost casual, like it was getting comfortable. And it tilted its head slightly, one way and then the other, as if it was trying to understand me, or maybe trying to understand how I could see it at all. That part sticks with me the most, that sense of curiosity, like I was the unusual thing. Time didn't work normally in that moment. It could have been 2 minutes or 20. I genuinely don't know. I just remember eventually my eyes started burning and my throat tightened, and I began to sob. Quiet at first, like I was trying to keep it inside my chest. My body started trembling, but I still couldn't move. And then, this is another detail I can picture so clearly. My Uncle Milo came home late. He was living with us then, young and always out with friends. I heard him coming up, heard his footsteps, and he heard me too. He called my name from the darkness, like, "Hey, why are you still up?" And the second he got close enough to scoop me up, the moment I felt arms around me, I completely lost it. Like something snapped loose in my body. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The kind of hysterical crying that scares adults because they can't figure out what's wrong. My uncle carried me inside, and my parents woke up, panicked and confused. Everyone was asking questions at once, and all I could do was cry and cling, because I didn't have the words to explain a faceless person with red eyes was just sitting next to me like it belonged there. And here's the part that still makes my skin prickle. I never saw it leave. There was no running away, no footsteps fading. It was simply not there anymore. Like the moment another adult entered the scene, it was gone. For years, that memory just lived in me. I think about it randomly and get that same sinking feeling in my stomach. At some point, like everyone does, I went looking online, trying to find anything that sounded similar. And it messed with me even more, because I realized other people had stories that felt weirdly familiar. Researchers, I finally brought it up to my mom again, as an adult. And she remembered the night. She remembered how inconsolable I was, how shaken everyone felt afterward. But she admitted they didn't really believe what I was saying back then. They assumed I had a nightmare or an overactive imagination. This time, I told her, I didn't make it up. I'm telling you, it happened. And she got quiet in this way that made me realize she was replaying it too, except now through adult eyes. She actually looked a little freaked out, like she suddenly didn't like the idea of that night being a kid's story anymore. We talked about what it could have been for a long time, and honestly, I still don't know. But if I trust my gut, if I trust what it felt like, whatever it was didn't feel demonic. It didn't feel like hatred or violence. It didn't touch me. It didn't threaten me. It felt strange and watchful and careful, like something that didn't want to scare a child, but didn't quite understand how not to. So I've never really been the ghosts aren't real type, but I've also never been the person who swears up and down they've seen things either. I've always sat somewhere in the middle, like, hey, just because I haven't witnessed something doesn't mean it can't exist, you know? My wife, Lena, and I have been married a little over 10 years now. We've got 3 boys, 12, 8, and a tiny newborn who still feels brand new every time I look at him. We live in a rental out in the countryside of southern Alabama, the kind of place where the nights are so quiet you can hear the house settling and the bugs outside doing their thing. We rent the place from the original owner's son. The woman who actually lived here most of her life had gotten too frail to stay on her own, so she moved in with her family before we came along. She passed not long after we moved in, strangely enough, on the exact day of my birthday. That stuck with me. We've been here a little over a year, and for most of that time, nothing happened. Nothing I could point to and say, that was definitely something. But the house, it's hard to explain. It's a normal older home, built sometime around the late 60s. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, big living room, small kitchen, and a back utility room that I use as my workspace. It's not creepy on the outside. It's not falling apart. It just has a feeling, like it's been holding its breath. Last winter we found out we were expecting again. I'll be honest, I was hoping for a girl this time. But we ended up being blessed with another little boy, and he is perfect. He was born healthy overall, except for hemophilia, which runs in our family. Our middle son has it too. So it wasn't a shock, just something we already knew how to handle. But about a month before the baby arrived, I started noticing things. At night, after everyone was asleep, I'd be working or cleaning up, and I'd hear footsteps in the living room. Not little creaks, actual walking, like someone shifting weight as they moved. I kept telling myself, old house, pipes, wood expanding. Don't get stupid. I mentioned it to Lena, and she kind of gave me that look like, okay, sure. But even then, I didn't feel scared. If anything, it felt neutral. Like whatever it wasn't trying to threaten me. I even thought about putting up cameras inside, just to settle it in my own head. But I didn't. I didn't want to turn the house into a project, and I didn't want to stir up something that felt, honestly, kind of harmless. Then the baby was born. We spent a couple days in the hospital, and we finally came home, exhausted, happy, carrying bags like we were moving in all over again. And that's when it got weird in a way I still can't explain. While we're unpacking, my 8-year-old, Mason, walks into the living room holding an old photo. It's a picture of a baby. And the crazy part is, the baby looked a lot like our newborn. Not identical, but close enough that it made my stomach flip. He said it had fallen out of a drawer in a desk in his room, one of those older wooden desks that the previous tenants left behind, and he'd been using that desk for months. He swore he'd never seen the photo before. We all kind of just stared at it, laughed awkwardly, and filed it under creepy coincidence, because what else are you supposed to do? But after the baby came home, that's when I started seeing shadows. And the thing is, it didn't feel hateful. It felt calm, almost familiar, like the sense you get when someone's in the room with you but you're not bothered by it. If I had to describe the vibe, and I know how that sounds, it felt feminine, like a woman or maybe a teenage girl. I never saw a face, never saw features, just shadow and presence and this odd calm that came with it. Until one night. 4 nights ago, I was in the kitchen making a quick snack before bed. Just normal, half-asleep routine stuff. And I noticed a shadow climbing up the wall near the dining area, like it was swelling outward, spreading. I turned to get a better look. And the second I did, my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. The feeling hit me in the gut first, like my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Pure dread. Not nerves. Not, I'm spooked. I mean the kind of terror where your body stops cooperating because it thinks you're about to die. This wasn't the smaller shadow I'd been seeing. This thing was massive. It blotted out light from 2 windows like it was standing directly in front of them, wide and heavy and wrong. I didn't even get a clear shape, just the size of it and the weight of it and that horrible, crushing sense of danger. I tried to speak and nothing came out. My throat locked up. My eyes filled up and I started crying without meaning to, like my body just short-circuited. And then it was gone. It left as fast as it came, like it had stepped backward into nothing. And the second I could move again, I started yelling, screaming really, telling it to get out. I'm a Christian, and I didn't even think. I just reacted. I ordered it to leave in the name of Jesus Christ over and over. Lena came rushing out of the bedroom and found me standing there sobbing and screaming at empty air. She grabbed me, held me, helped me breathe. I know it looked insane. I know how that sounds out loud, but I also know what I felt. The next day, I sat my kids down and told them, carefully, what happened. I didn't want to scare them, but I needed to know if they'd noticed anything. And my oldest, Caleb, goes, dead serious. "Oh, I told you there's a demon in my closet. His name is Ethan." Like he was reminding me I forgot to buy milk. Apparently, he'd said it before, maybe once, months back, and I brushed it off because kids say wild stuff. But now he's telling me his closet door sometimes opens and shuts on its own. He says he's never seen anything, just that. And the most unsettling part? He wasn't scared. He shrugged like it was annoying more than anything. Then the next night, this is the part that messes with my head the most. I'm walking into the utility room with a handful of tools, and I feel a hand slide onto my hip. Not a grab, not a poke. More like a gentle, almost affectionate touch, the kind that makes you instinctively think, "Oh, that's my wife." I turned around expecting Lena. Nobody. And I know how crazy it sounds, but it didn't feel scary. It felt comforting, warm, like something trying to calm me down. So now I'm stuck with this weird split reality. One presence that felt peaceful for months, and then that one night, this enormous thing that made my whole body freeze in terror like it was hardwired into me. Ever since that night, the house hasn't felt the same. Even when nothing is happening, I feel on edge, like the air is too tight, like something shifted and didn't shift back. I'm not trying to record anything. I'm not trying to provoke it. I don't want proof. I don't want a picture or a sound clip that I can't unsee or unhear. I just want peace. And I keep wondering, did the baby's arrival change something? Did that new energy in the house draw attention? Was that photo a coincidence or a warning? Or just some strange thread connecting past and present? I don't know. I truly don't. I just know I have to live here for now. Rentals are scarce out here and everything is overpriced. So I'm doing what I can, praying, keeping my head on straight, trying not to let fear take over my home. And if you're listening to this, I'm not asking you to make it worse. Please don't. I'm living it. I just want it quiet again. I want the house to feel like a house. That's all. So, let me give you a little backstory, because it'll make everything else make sense. I'm Maya, I'm 20, and I'm from the UK. Ever since I was a kid, I've had this weird, constant thread running through my life, like I'm always just close enough to the paranormal for it to notice me back. I had a few intense moments years ago, but things really kicked off again after we moved into our current place about 2 years back. It's this older tower block, 10 floors, kind of stuck in time. I'm up on the 7th floor, and the building has that heavy, worn-in feeling, like it's absorbed decades of people coming and going. You can tell nothing's been properly updated since it first went up, and there are those safety nets around the balconies now. People in the area whisper about why they had to add them, and honestly, you don't hear that kind of thing without it changing how you feel walking the halls at night. I live here with my dad, and at first, it was just little things. A door shifting when it shouldn't, the sense that someone had just passed behind you, even though you're alone. Stuff being moved. But here's the part that gets me. It's always my bedroom. Not the lounge, not the kitchen, not even the corridor. Just my room, like it's been claimed. And my dad isn't the type to play things up. He's pretty practical, you know? But a while back, I was away visiting family, and he was home alone. He had his headphones on and was walking down the corridor toward his room, which is right next to mine. He told me he looked up and saw, clear as day, a small, elderly woman, maybe around 4.5 feet, wearing this old-fashioned nightgown. Not blurry, not a maybe, a full figure, walking like she belonged there. She didn't even look at him. She just went right past him and straight into my bedroom. When he told me that, my stomach went cold, because I knew exactly what he meant. I've seen her too. She's the one I see the most, always moving through my room in the same way, like she has a route she takes. I never catch her face, not properly. It's more the shape, the motion, the unmistakable nightgown. Sometimes she passes near the foot of my bed or by where my TV is. And even though it's unsettling, the strange part is, I don't feel pure evil from her. It's not like those stories where the air turns foul and everything feels violent. It's more like presence, attention. But my cat? Oh, my cat is not confused at all. He won't go in there. He'll sit outside my door and stare, ears twitching, like he's listening to something I can't hear. If I try to coax him in, he just backs away like the doorway is a boundary he refuses to cross. So that's been my normal for 2 years. Creepy but manageable, right? Until this week. Because I'm moving out in a few days for university, and the closer it gets, the more I've had this nagging feeling that whatever's in my room doesn't like the idea of me leaving. Like it's not just haunting a space, it's aware of me. Last week I packed most of my stuff up and stayed over at my boyfriend Ethan's place, trying to squeeze in as much time with him as I could before I go. While I was gone, my dad left the flat in absolute state, typical, and he offered my older sister Leah some money to clean it since she runs a small cleaning business. One afternoon, Leah went over there alone. She was on the phone to my brother, just chatting about me moving out. Nothing dramatic, just normal family talk. And the second my name and moving came into the conversation, she heard this massive bang come from my bedroom. Not a knock, not a creak. A bang like something had been thrown, like furniture had slammed. When she pushed the door open, she said it looked like someone had gone in and tossed the entire place in seconds. My drawers were yanked open. My wardrobe doors were wide. Pillows and bedding were on the floor. A bag of clothes I'd packed, spilled everywhere like it had been ripped apart. Even my soft toys were scattered. Leah didn't stand there and investigate. She didn't call out. She didn't do anything brave. She ran, straight out of the flat. And honestly, I don't blame her. Today I came back from Ethan's and my dad was home. He'd already seen what Leah saw, so he didn't even have to explain it. I just walked to my room and stopped. The second I saw it, I felt this deep uneasiness settle into my chest. Not just fear, something heavier. Like I'd walked into a room where someone had been furious. I just shut the door. I couldn't even look at it properly. I told myself, nope, not right now. I went and sat with my dad and tried to focus on practical things. My moving plan, what time we'd leave, what still needed packing. And then, another bang. Louder than I expected, sharp, immediate. My dad and I looked at each other, and I felt my skin go prickly all over. I stood up, walked to my door, and opened it. I stepped inside, and 3 of my drawers, the ones near the wardrobe, were closed. They had been open just minutes before. I know they were. My brain was still replaying the mess in my head, trying to make sense of it. And now it was like something had decided, no, this is how it's going to be. It's hard to explain what that does to you, emotionally. Because it wasn't just messy. It wasn't just weird. It felt like a response. Like something in that room heard us talking about me leaving and made sure we understood it was listening. Okay, so I need to tell you about what happened, because it's one of those nights that still feels like it's clinging to me a little. Last night, well, technically early this morning, my boyfriend, I'll call him Milo, and I could not sleep. It was around 2:15 a.m., that ugly, quiet hour where your brain starts getting loud. Milo was having a really hard time emotionally. He's been grieving his granddad, Arthur, who, honestly, sounds like the one person in his family who truly showed up for him. Like, really showed up. He started crying, and I just held him. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed there, rubbing his back, letting him shake it out. And later he told me that in that exact moment, he was thinking, I wish he was back. I wish Arthur was here. I didn't know that at the time, but it matters because of what happened next. Here's the strange part. Earlier that day, I'd made Milo toast. Just toast, nothing dramatic. But when I brought it to him, he went kind of still and said, "That's exactly how Arthur used to make it. Same type of bread, same amount of butter, and I'd even sliced it into these little uneven triangles the way his granddad apparently always did. I swear to you, I wasn't trying to recreate anything. I wasn't even thinking. My hands just did it. And then this morning, it happened again. Same toast, same exact vibe, and I also grabbed him a little pastry on the way home, one of those cherry almond ones from the bakery. I didn't even pause to choose it. I just grabbed it like it was automatic. Milo looked at it and said, Arthur used to bring me one of those when I'd slept well, like, as a reward. And the thing is, Milo did sleep well, for the first time in ages. And just so you understand this whole thing fully, Milo has this teddy bear that holds a small memorial capsule with Arthur's ashes inside. He keeps it close. Like, it's not just a keepsake, it's comfort, it's safety. That bear becomes important. So, that night, while we were lying there, I started talking about how when I was a kid, I used to mess around with silly seance stuff, like holding hands, asking questions into the dark, laughing about it. My mom has always been the kind of person who says she feels things, like she'll know someone's about to call before the phone rings, or she'll dream something and it'll happen. I used to roll my eyes, but also, a part of me has always wondered if I inherited some of it. I don't know why it came up, but it did, and it led to this moment where Milo and I ended up holding hands in bed and just talking into the room, quietly. Like, Arthur, if you're here, if you can hear us, can you give us a sign? And I'm not kidding when I tell you, we got sound back. Twice. Not like a house creak, not like plumbing, something sharper, like a weird little audio response in the air. The kind of noise that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. Milo froze. Full body tension. He looked terrified, and I tried to keep my voice calm and warm because he was already spiraling. I said something like, "It's okay. If that's him, then maybe it means he's here in a protective way. Maybe he's checking on you." We ended up talking about something Arthur had said before he died, how he'd send someone to look after Milo one day. And listen, I know how that sounds, but Milo said it like it was a real conversation they'd had. And I've always felt this intense, protective pull toward Milo, like I'd throw myself in front of anything if it meant he didn't get hurt. So in that moment, it felt weirdly possible. But then Milo kept whispering, "You're doing it like him." And at first I laughed it off, like, "Babe, you're high and emotional. You're connecting dots." But he was serious. He told me my laugh, my actual laugh, sounded exactly like Arthur's laugh. Not just similar, like it hit him in the chest. And then, without thinking, I did this little gesture where I leaned my forehead into his hair, kind of nuzzled him while I hummed, and Milo jerked back and said, "He used to do that exact thing." And I swear, it felt like my body was doing things before I decided to do them, like I was watching myself from half a step behind. Then I started getting this ache in my leg, sharp cramps, deep pain. And Milo went pale and said Arthur had struggled with really bad leg pain near the end. I kept flexing my calf and wincing, and Milo asked over and over, "Is it gone?" And I kept answering in this weird, clipped way that didn't sound like me. Even I noticed it, like the words weren't passing through my usual filter. At this point, I was still trying to talk myself down. Like, okay, we hit the vape, it's late, we're sleep deprived, we're emotional, it's just the perfect storm. But the coincidences just kept stacking, and Milo got more and more scared the more I tried to reassure him. So we left the room. Like fully got up, grabbed blankets and moved to the other room because the air in the bedroom felt heavy. I felt wrong. That's the only word. Like my skin didn't fit right. Like something had stepped into my space and I couldn't tell where I ended. Milo sat on the edge of the bed holding the teddy bear, trying to steady himself. And then he said, very quietly, "Arthur, if you're here, please stop scaring us." And this is where it gets hard to explain without sounding ridiculous. Milo started asking questions, simple ones, yes or no. Are you here? Are you trying to help? Can you calm down? That kind of thing. And the responses came out of my mouth. Not like I chose to answer, not like I was pretending. It was more like the answers rose up fully formed and just left me. I remember hearing my own voice and thinking, why did I say that? And I couldn't stop it. It felt like something was steering. Milo was shaking. I was shaking. And I could feel him deciding in real time whether he thought I was having some kind of episode or whether this was actually happening. He finally said, firmly, "Arthur, you need to leave her. Go back. Go back into the bear." And I don't know what came over me, but I reached out and put my hand on the teddy bear, like I was compelled. The second I touched it, I got this rush through my body, like a wave. My chest tightened. I couldn't catch my breath, and I started breathing really fast like I'd sprinted, like my lungs forgot the rhythm. And then it stopped, like a switch flipped. I just sat there, hand still on the bear, breathing hard, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm back. That's me. That's actually me again. It was around 5 a.m. when that happened. After that, we both crawled into bed and fell asleep. Real sleep. Deep sleep. The kind you don't force. And the weirdest part is, we've both been struggling to sleep next to each other because we both have trauma stuff that gets triggered at night. Usually one of us jolts awake, panics, leaves the room. But this time, we slept. Together. Peacefully. So now I'm sitting here the next day feeling off. Like there's a faint echo of last night still in my body. And I honestly don't know what to believe. Was it just the vape and exhaustion and grief and suggestion creating a shared hallucination? Maybe. That's the logical explanation. I don't know. I just know it was the strangest night I've ever had. And I needed to tell someone who would actually listen. Because whether it was something spiritual or something psychological, something happened. And I can't shake the feeling that it meant something. Okay, so before I tell you what happened, you should know where I'm coming from. At the time, I was studying civil engineering. I've always been the there's a logical explanation kind of person. I'm not religious, more agnostic than anything, and I genuinely love trying to understand the universe, but in a scientific way. Ghost stories? Paranormal stuff? I used to roll my eyes. I'd have told you there's a reasonable explanation for basically everything people claim they've seen. And then, something happened with my girlfriend back then. She's my wife now, Maya. Something we both saw, together, wide awake, totally sober. And it messed with my worldview in a way I still can't neatly pack back into a box. This was about 8 or 9 years ago, when we were home for the summer in Lincoln, Nebraska. We were college kids, bored out of our minds one night, and we decided to drive out into the country just to stargaze and be alone for a while. No plan, no destination, just, let's get away from the lights and sit under the sky. So we took my car and headed out past the suburbs, farther and farther, until the streetlights disappeared. I started turning onto random gravel roads, just kind of wandering, looking for a spot that felt quiet and dark. Eventually, I found this weird little dead end, almost like a brand new driveway that led nowhere. Fresh concrete, shaped like a turnaround, like someone planned to build a house there, but hadn't. No buildings, no porch lights, nothing. Just fields. You could have spun in a slow circle and seen farmland in every direction. I turned the car around so we were facing north, and we sat there for a couple hours talking about life, future plans, dumb college worries, the kind of soft, sleepy conversation you only have at like 1 in the morning when the world feels paused. It was late summer, August, I think, because the air was warm but not sticky anymore, and the corn in the field across the road was tall. Like, really tall, easily above our heads. That detail matters, I promise. Around 2:30 a.m., we decided we should head back before our parents woke up and realized we were missing. So I reached for my keys. I remember it so clearly. I slid the key into the ignition, and my left hand went to the headlight switch because I was about to turn them on. And that's when Maya grabbed my right arm, hard. Like, not a gentle wait, a full panicked yank that made my whole body jolt. It scared me so badly I almost swore out loud. I turned to her like, "What is your problem?" But she wasn't looking at me. She was staring straight ahead through the windshield with this expression I still can't forget. Eyes wide, face drained, like her brain couldn't decide whether to scream or freeze. And the instant I followed her gaze, I felt that cold electric feeling climb up the back of my neck. You know that sensation when your body reacts before your mind catches up? Like every instinct you have is suddenly on high alert? Something was out on the gravel road in front of us. At first, my brain tried to make it a person. It wanted it to be a person so badly. But it didn't move like one. It was tall. Too tall. From where we sat, it looked like this pale, human-shaped figure, maybe 7 or 8 feet high, and it was gliding from left to right across the road. The corn behind it was tall, and this thing looked taller than the corn. That's the part that still makes my stomach flip, even now, because corn in August is not short, and it wasn't walking. There was no rhythm, no bounce, no stepping, no arms swinging. No legs doing anything that made sense. It just drifted, smoothly, like it was sliding on rails. We couldn't see details because it was dark. No moon, no nearby lights, just stars and black fields. But the silhouette was bright enough to register as white against everything else. Maya told me later it reminded her of this long, stretched-out, rubbery shape, like a lanky, Gumby outline almost. And the whole time, my fingers were still frozen on the headlight switch. I had this split-second debate raging in my head. Turn the headlights on and see what it is. Or don't, because if it's something that shouldn't be there, maybe it doesn't know you're here. It's embarrassing to admit, but fear does weird math in your brain. Logic was completely losing to instinct. We watched it for, 10 seconds, maybe 15, but it felt longer, like time got thick. The figure kept gliding to the right until it passed beyond the edge of what we could see. The moment it disappeared, my body finally unlocked. I didn't even turn on the headlights. I just started the car and punched the gas like the road was on fire. Gravel popped under the tires, and we shot off in the opposite direction, bouncing over washboard ruts, not caring at all about noise or dust. Neither of us really talked on the drive back. Not in a normal way. It was more like little broken sentences. Did you? I saw it. What was that? And then, long stretches of silence where we were both replaying it, trying to force it into something explainable. When we got back to my parents' place, I told them what happened. Maya didn't even want to be in the room for it. She was so freaked out she basically fled to the hallway like saying it out loud might bring it closer. She ended up staying the night because she didn't want to drive home alone, and honestly, I didn't want her to either. Neither of us slept. We just laid there in the dark, listening for nothing, and feeling stupid and shaken and wide awake. And here's the part that still sticks with me. If I'd been alone, I would have convinced myself I hallucinated, that I was overtired, that my mind stitched together shadows and corn and starlight into a story. But I wasn't alone. Maya saw it too, at the exact same moment, with the exact same fear, with the exact same description. Two separate brains, same impossible thing. To this day, I can't tell you what it was. I've gone through all the usual explanations: an animal, a person, a trick of perspective, headlights from somewhere, a weird fog, anything. But nothing fits cleanly, especially the height and the movement, and the way it seemed to float without any normal human motion. The only rational idea I can offer that doesn't collapse immediately is, maybe it was some prank. Like a tall guy in a costume doing something ridiculous at 3 a.m. out in the middle of nowhere. Which, sure, possible. But then I picture it more clearly. A dude in a massive white suit, gliding silently along a gravel road, taller than a cornfield, with no visible gait. And somehow that explanation feels almost less believable. So I don't know. I just know that night took my certainty, the smug part of my skepticism, and cracked it. And even now, years later, I can still picture that pale shape sliding across that empty road like it belonged there. And we didn't. Welcome to Paranormal M. How's it going? Drop where you're watching from down in the comments. Thanks so much for sending in your creepy encounters. And if you've got more paranormal stories, feel free to send them our way. I love telling these stories and helping you drift off to sleep. So, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Alright, let's jump into tonight's stories. So, picture this. It's peak winter, the kind where your breath turns white and the nights feel way longer than the days. I'm in 8th grade, about 14, and for some reason, me and my friends thought it was a fantastic idea to play cricket at dawn every Saturday and Sunday. And when I say dawn, I mean stupid early, like 4:45 a.m. There was this huge open ground about a 15-minute walk from my place. It wasn't even an official cricket ground, more like a huge, dusty field surrounded by trees, with this old fort looming behind it. People said it was built by some sultan centuries ago. No one really knew the exact history, but it definitely had that ancient, slightly creepy vibe. Broken walls, dark arches, and that kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Anyway, for us, it was perfect. Big space, no traffic, no adults telling us to go do our homework. I used to go there with my school friends, and my closest friend back then was this guy who lived directly opposite my building. Let's call him Aman. Now, Aman was one of those rare people who can just wake up early without wanting to destroy the world. His job, unofficially, was to wake me up. Every game day, he'd get up, cross the lane, stand outside my building, and start calling my name. Arjun! Oi, Arjun! Ujja! And I'd shout back from inside, all groggy. Ha ha, I'm up. Then he'd go back to his place, freshen up, and we'd meet downstairs with the rest of the guys. So this one Saturday, it was the same routine. I hear Aman calling my name. I drag myself out of bed, yell back that I'm awake, he goes home to get ready, and then we all meet outside and walk to the ground together, bats and stumps in hand, arguing about who's going to open the batting. Now, there's something else about that ground. Because it was far from the main residential area, people used it for, let's just say, weird stuff, superstitious things, black magic type rituals. It wasn't unheard of to find strange things lying around. We'd see lemons cut in half with something like red powder or stains on them. Once we saw a piece of meat hanging from a thread tied to a branch near the entrance. Little piles of ash, burnt incense, that kind of thing. For a lot of people, especially where I'm from, these are just part of life. You grow up seeing this stuff around. Folks do it to ward off bad luck or get rid of problems. We used to just roll our eyes, stay away from it, and mind our own business. So that morning, we reached the ground around 5 a.m. on the dot. It's still dark, that bluish kind of darkness just before sunrise. The fort behind the ground looks extra spooky, all shadows and broken edges, but we're too excited to care. We set up the stumps, toss a coin, pick teams, and start playing. I'm a pretty decent fielder, especially in the outfield, so they send me to the boundary line. I'm standing there, shivering a little in the cold, rubbing my hands together, doing those little hops fielders do just to feel like they're ready. The game is going well. A few overs in, the batsman smacks the ball hard in my direction, but a bit to my right. I start sprinting after it. It keeps rolling, 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 and it finally stops near a clump of bushes. I'm running full speed, but the moment I see where the ball has stopped, I just slow down. And my cricket ball is literally touching the edge of one of those stones. Now, I'm not someone who really believes in all that, but I'm also not brave enough to casually walk into the middle of someone's creepy ritual leftovers at 5 in the morning. So I just stand there. Someone from the pitch shouts, "Arey ball la na, throw the ball." But I don't move. A few seconds later, Aman comes running toward me. He's like, "What happened? Why are you just standing there?" I just point silently at the stones. He looks at it, looks at me, and bursts out laughing. "Oh, you got scared of this? You coward," he says, still laughing. Before I can stop him, he bends down, picks up the ball casually, almost stepping inside that little stone circle, and tosses it back toward the pitch. "Chul, let's go. Nothing's going to happen," he says. I take one last look at that setup, stone, red stains, incense, the whole thing, and jog back with him. We finish the match, argue about scores like always, and after a few hours we pack up and go home. So far, normal day, right? Now comes the part that still gives me chills. The next morning, Sunday, I'm dead asleep, completely knocked out. At some point, through my sleep, I start hearing someone calling my name. "Arjun. Arjun, ut." At first, I ignore it because, honestly, I'm so sleepy. And it sounds kind of far away, like it's coming from outside my building again. But the voice doesn't stop. "Arjun. Oi, Arjun." After hearing it 3-4 times, I finally wake up properly. In my half-asleep state, I don't overthink it. I just assume, like always, it's Aman. So from inside my room, without even getting up, I shout back, a little annoyed, "Huh, I'm up." And then I hear it, the sound of footsteps running away from outside. You know that pattern where slippers slap lightly against the ground? That, fading away toward the lane. I'm like, okay, cool. As usual, he woke me up. Now he'll go get ready and come back in a bit. So I drag myself out of bed, go to the bathroom, wash my face, brush my teeth, change into my track pants. And then I sit down on the couch with my tablet, start playing Subway Surfers while I wait for him to come back and knock again. I'm playing for a while, long enough to lose track of time. I suddenly realize it's been a while. No knock, no calling, no messages, no sound of boys gathering outside. I get this tiny, uneasy feeling in my stomach. So I pause the game, get up, and walk over to the main door. There's this little curtain we keep over the glass panel. I pull it aside and peek outside, straight toward Amon's house. And what I see just feels wrong. His house is completely dark. Main lights off, balcony lights off. The front door is shut. No movement. Not even that faint glow from someone's phone or TV inside. Just darkness. And the lane outside? Silent. It doesn't match what I felt had just happened. Someone calling my name, someone running away. I frown and think, maybe his lights are just off today? But something doesn't sit right. So I go back to the living room, pick up my tablet, and tap the screen to check the time. It says 2:30 a.m. I just stare at it. Then I think, okay, maybe my tablet's wrong. It does that sometimes, right? So I rush over to the digital clock we keep near the TV. 2:30 a.m. My brain kind of pauses, because suddenly all the pieces slam together. I sleep deep. On weekends, my parents sometimes struggle to wake me up even at 7 or 8. It sounded exactly like Amon. I heard footsteps running away after I replied. And yet, at 2:30 a.m., the whole neighborhood is dead silent and dark. My heart starts racing, like full panic mode. I remember just standing in the middle of the living room, trying to process. Who woke me up? Who was calling my name outside? If Amon is asleep at his place, who did I talk to? And why did it sound just like him? I was 14, okay? Not exactly equipped to deal with possibly paranormal audio hallucinations at 2:30 a.m. My mind started going back to that totem we'd seen the previous morning. The red stains, the circle of stones, the way I froze, the way Amon had laughed and casually picked up the ball, stepping so close to it. And this thought just pops into my head that I couldn't shake. What if something from there followed us home? I know how crazy that sounds, but when you're a kid, alone in a dark living room with your heart pounding, logic doesn't stand a chance against fear. I didn't even try to go back to sleep. I just sat there on the sofa, lights on, tablet in my hands, not really playing. Every tiny sound made me jump. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting to hear my name again. I watched the clock slowly crawl toward morning. Eventually, around 5 a.m., the normal time, there it was again. Arjun, Uthja. Same familiar tone, same volume, but this time I knew it was the real thing. I almost ran to the door, opened it, and sure enough, there was Amon standing outside, cricket bag on his shoulder, slightly sleepy but very much alive and normal. The first thing I said wasn't even good morning. I just blurted out, "Were you outside my house at 2:30 a.m. today?" He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. 2:30? Are you mad? If I step out of my house at that time just to prank you, my parents will literally kill me. I was sleeping, bro. I stared at him for a full 3 seconds. It wasn't you? I asked again, even though I already knew the answer. He shakes his head. No, why would I do that? What happened? And there it was, confirmation. It wasn't him. And the thing that really freaked me out? The only 2 people who had seen that weird totem the day before were me and him. Later that day, I told my parents everything. The voice, the footsteps, the time, the darkness. How sure I was that it was Amon. I thought they'd tell me I was imagining things, or that I had a dream and confused it with reality. But instead, my mom got this serious look on her face. My dad went quiet. Then my mom said very firmly, "If something like that ever happens again, if anyone calls you at that hour, do not go outside alone. Wake us up first." And then she added, "Even if it sounds like your friend or your cousin or someone you know, don't follow them at night." That line stuck with me. Even if they look or sound like your friend, don't follow them. Honestly, that scared me even more than the actual incident. I still don't know what happened that night. Maybe there's some rational explanation I just haven't thought of. Maybe my brain played tricks on me. Or maybe it was something else. All I know is that one weird, cold, 2:30 a.m. wake-up call has lived in my head rent-free ever since. So, a couple of summers ago, we went camping way up in the mountains. It wasn't a formal campground, more like one of those spots you find after bumping down a dirt road for too long and saying, "Yeah, this feels right." We found this clearing tucked between tall pines with a little river maybe 300 feet away. To the right of where we parked was this soggy, mossy bog, and to the left and behind us was nothing but thick forest, fallen logs, ferns, branches everywhere. It felt wild, but in that exciting way. At the time, our youngest, Jonah, was about 3 years old, and because he's our baby and we're, admittedly, helicopter parents, we did our usual camp rules talk. No going near the water without us. No going into the marsh. You stay where we can see you. We always do that talk. Every trip. We'd only been there maybe an hour. We were still setting up, unloading the truck, getting the tent halfway up, dogs running around, our older kids arguing about who got which sleeping bag. You know, normal chaos. I know I had just seen Jonah in camp with us. He's one of those kids who usually sticks pretty close, and at that age, he still wanted to be up in my arms half the time. I remember glancing over, seeing him by the cooler, and then turning my back to shake out a tarp or grab something from the truck. And then we heard it. Just one scream. Not long, not a tantrum, just a sharp cry, like he was startled or hurt. Then complete silence. You know how your whole body just goes cold in an instant? That's what happened to me. I spun around, expecting to see him right there. He wasn't. I called his name once, then louder. Nothing. My husband, Mark, dropped what he was doing and looked too. We're scanning the whole campsite, behind the chairs, by the trees, by the fire pit. Nothing. We both started running toward the direction that scream had come from, toward the marsh. The ground was terrible. The bog was deeper than it looked, mud and water up to our shins in some places, the kind that sucks at your shoes when you pull your foot out. The other side, where the trees thickened, was full of roots and branches and fallen logs that you had to climb over. It wasn't the kind of place a little kid could just wander easily. And the whole time we're yelling, "Jonah, buddy, cry so we can hear you. Call mommy, say something." Just our voices echoing back at us. That silence was the worst part. You can talk yourself down from a lot of fears if you at least hear your kid crying. But there was nothing. We kept pushing forward, slipping on mud, tripping over branches. Then, after what was probably only a minute or two, but felt like forever, I spotted this little shape tucked behind a big tree, maybe 80 yards from camp, way farther than I could imagine him going, especially in that terrain. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against the trunk, shoulders shaking, but he wasn't making any sound. He was just silently crying, tears running down his face. This is the same kid who still rode in the stroller for most walks because his legs got tired. There is no way he should have been able to get out there that fast, over that kind of ground, without us seeing or hearing more. I ran to him, scooped him up, and he clung to me like he was terrified to let go. His clothes were damp, his little boots were muddy, but there were no scratches, no obvious injuries, just that stunned, quiet crying. We brought him back to camp, dried him off, changed his clothes, and went over the rules again. Extra serious this time. No water, no marsh, no wandering. And then, we sort of just never talked about it again. Life got busy. Kids, work, everything else. It turned into one of those weird things that you decide to mentally file away under, well, that was scary, and move on from. Fast forward to last week. We decided to go back up into the mountains to collect firewood. Mark remembered that same general area, said there were plenty of downed trees that would be perfect for cutting and stacking for the winter. We loaded the kids into the truck, grabbed the chainsaw, brought the dogs, and headed out. We did not tell the kids we were going back to that same spot. We didn't mention we'd camped there before. As far as they knew, it was just another random trip to get firewood. We pulled up, parked in almost the exact same place, and the older kids jumped out right away. The dogs took off, thrilled to be out, doing their dog thing. But Jonah, now a year older, wouldn't unbuckle. He held onto his seatbelt and said, "I don't want to get out." Which was weird, because usually he's the first one launching himself out of the truck to go explore. I told him, "Hey buddy, it's okay. We're just getting wood. You can help Daddy stack it." He shook his head hard and said, "No, I'm staying in the truck." I finally convinced him to at least come stand in the open doorway to get some air, but he refused to put his feet on the ground. He stayed in the back, gripping the edge of the seat like it was a life raft. I crouched next to him and asked, "What's wrong? You usually love the woods." He looked out toward the trees in the boggy area and said, very quietly, "I'm scared of the bears." I tried to reassure him. I told him our dogs had been running all over, and if there were any bears, they would have scared them away. I pointed out that everything was loud and busy, not the kind of place a bear would be hanging out right that second. He got frustrated and his eyes filled with tears, and he said, "No, Mommy, not bears. The bear people." I felt this little chill run through me. "The bear people?" I asked. "Who are the bear people?" He took a breath and then described them, very matter-of-factly, as if he were telling me about kids on the playground. "They're little people. They're short, and their faces are squished and their noses go up and they have sharp teeth. They wear bear clothes." He kind of scrunched his own nose up as he said it to show me. I didn't know what to say, so I asked, "Have you seen them before?" He looked at me like I was supposed to already know the answer. "They're the ones who took me last time," he said. "Remember? Then you and Daddy ran through the forest to find me, and they dropped me on my butt. You came and got me, Mommy." He said it like he was reminding me of something I'd forgotten, like this was a shared memory, and my stomach just dropped. Because we had never talked with him about what happened that day. Not in detail. We never said anything about being taken or about us running through the woods to find him. As far as I knew, he barely remembered that camping trip at all. I just looked at him for a second. At this little kid, knuckles white from gripping the seat, eyes darting between the trees and me. And something in me decided, very clearly, we're done here. I told Mark we were leaving, right then. No firewood, no, let's just finish this log. We packed everything back into the truck, called the dogs, and drove away. I started reading about the area we'd been camping in, then about local native tribes, then their stories and legends. And I came across these old stories. Legends about these small, human-like beings that live up in those mountains. Sometimes they're described as spirits, sometimes as more physical beings. Stories about them stealing children, wearing animal hides, having strange, distorted faces, sharp teeth. Some of the descriptions matched what Jonah said almost exactly. Short, wearing animal skins. Tricky, dangerous. The kind of thing kids are warned about in stories to keep them from wandering off. I sat there, looking at the screen, replaying his little voice in my head. "They're the people who took me last time. They dropped me on my butt. You and Daddy ran through the forest to find me. I don't know what happened that day. Not really. I can try to explain it logically. Maybe he wandered farther than we realized. Maybe he pieced things together from half-overheard adult conversations or from something he saw somewhere. But I also know what it felt like, hearing that single scream and then nothing. I know how impossibly far away he was when we found him, and I know the way his body tensed when we pulled into that clearing again a year later with no prompting, and he refused to touch the ground. So now, I'll be honest with you. I don't think of myself as much of an outdoorsy person anymore. I used to love the woods. I loved the quiet, the trees, the sense of being away from everything. Now, when I think about going back up there, all I can see are those trees, that bog, that empty space where my child suddenly wasn't, and the way he said, "bear people," like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And as far as I'm concerned, that was my last camping trip. So, let me just start at the beginning. It really kicked off when we moved into what we thought was our forever starter home. It was this little place right across from my old middle school. The kind of house you tell yourself, okay, this is where we grow up a bit. At first, it was small stuff. I'd be home alone, folding laundry or cleaning the kitchen, and I'd hear my husband's voice, clear as day, calling my name from the hallway. So I'd call back, "Yeah? What do you need?" And there'd be nothing. No answer. No footsteps. Just that heavy, crowded silence you get when you know you're supposed to be alone. It happened more than once. Honestly, more than 10 times. I'd hear him say things like, "Hey, come here a sec," or just, "Babe?" And when I'd check, he'd either be at work or in the other room with his headphones on, absolutely sure he hadn't said a word. Then came the legs. I'd be standing at the counter or at the sink, and I'd see, out of the corner of my eye, shoes and calves just behind me, like someone was standing close enough to reach out and touch me. I'd turn around, expecting to bump into somebody, and nothing. Just the empty kitchen, the empty hallway. It wasn't just me either. My husband started hearing me when I wasn't there. He'd be home alone and swear he heard my voice in the bedroom or in the hallway. I'd be at the store or at work or in the shower with the water running, and he'd swear I'd just said his name. Now, he does have a mild schizophrenia diagnosis, so hearing things isn't totally new for him. It's something we've lived with and managed together. But this wasn't the usual pattern. It started happening way more often than normal. He told me, "This doesn't feel like my usual stuff. It feels external, like it's in the house." And that's when we found out about the land. So our place stands on what used to be part of a burial ground that was supposedly moved a long time ago. According to the paperwork, everything was handled properly, according to the religion that ran the cemetery. All respectful, all taken care of, at least on paper. Let's just say it didn't feel taken care of from inside that house. Things escalated, fast. I started getting really sick. I'd already had my gallbladder out a couple of years ago, so I know that pain. And this felt exactly like a gallbladder attack, except it made no sense. I couldn't keep food down. Sometimes even water made me nauseous, and sleep just stopped being a thing. I'd lie there for hours, exhausted and wired at the same time. And my mood? I was angry all the time. Not just irritated, like bone-deep rage and sadness that didn't match what was actually happening in my life. Little things would happen, and I'd react like the world was ending. I'd cry for no reason. I'd snap at my husband over the tiniest stuff. One night, he just looked at me and said, "Something is really wrong. This isn't you. We need a break. We're going to go stay with family for a few days." So we did. We packed bags and left the house for a long weekend. I was half convinced I'd feel just as awful there, because hey, if it's my body, I'm taking my body with me, right? The first night away, I slept for 12 hours straight. 12. I can't remember the last time that happened. And it wasn't just sleep, it was peaceful. No weird dreams, no feeling watched, no waking up in panic. Just quiet. My husband looked at me and said, half joking, half serious, "You look like you just got your soul back." The weirdest part? While we were away, he didn't hear my voice once. Usually, back at the house, he'd hear it a couple of times a day. Little phrases, my name, something from another room. But on that trip, silence. Just family noise and normal life. We went back home the following Tuesday because we had arranged for someone religious, a spiritual leader, to come and help us. We were hopeful. We thought, okay, maybe this will calm things down, bless the house, clear whatever's lingering. Yeah. No. If anything, that made it worse. After the visit, the house felt heavier. My sleep went bad again, my stomach started acting up, and my husband's experiences ramped up too. More footsteps, more voices, more shadows that didn't quite match anything that should have been there. Around the same time, my husband got an offer from one of the big tech companies. They'd been scouting him for a bit, and finally it turned into a real opportunity in another city. We just looked at each other and knew this was our exit. We said, okay, that's it. This is our sign. We're leaving. So we moved, packed our lives into boxes, did what we had to do, and got out last month. I didn't post an update for a while because, honestly, I wanted us to settle and breathe first, to see if things actually stayed quiet. And they have. Our new place? No voices. No legs behind me. No sudden waves of hatred or despair. We're still dealing with life, of course, but it feels like our emotions again, not something being projected onto us. Now, about the old house. We didn't sell it. We could have, but both of us had this gut feeling that it wouldn't be right to just hand it over to some unsuspecting family and walk away. We couldn't stand the thought of kids moving in and going through what we went through. So for now, it's staying vacant. It's still technically our home, but it's more like a question mark. We're waiting, hoping we can get real answers someday, some kind of resolution that actually feels like closure. Spiritually, emotionally, all of it. In the middle of all this, I changed morgues. I still work around the dead, just new city, new building, new coworkers. And let me tell you, they are not shy. They've already started telling me what they experienced down there. Little stories, strange noises, things moving when nobody's around. I still keep in touch with my old morgue too. I had a spirit there I called Lena. She sort of became my favorite, if you can have a favorite ghost. The team promised they'd keep her company and keep me updated on her and the other spirits that hang around. So now I'm in this weird in-between. We have the haunted house we left behind, the new morgue full of stories just starting, and the old morgue with its own little spirit family that I still hear about. And that's why I'm here, talking to you. If you're up for it, I want to share all of it. The house, the morgues, the quiet moments, the downright terrifying ones. Not to convince anyone of anything, but just to tell you what we've lived through, as honestly and warmly as I can. Because whether you believe in ghosts or not, I can tell you this much. Some places remember, some places hold on, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to listen. Say, I hear you, and then choose somewhere else to lay your head at night. So, no new encounters yet. Right now, I'm still trying to sort out the whole camera situation. I want to mount a few around the house, but finding the right ones out here in the provinces is harder than I expected. And even when I do find some, all the walls in this house are cement, so drilling into them is a whole project by itself. On top of that, I still need the owner's permission before I start sticking holes in his house, so that's another hurdle. Anyway, while I'm waiting on the cameras, I've been digging more into the history of this place. And the lore, I guess you could call it. I found out this house has been blessed 5 separate times over the years by 3 different kinds of pastors. 1 born again, 1 Catholic, and 1 Pentecostal. The Philippines has this really strong Christian influence from Spanish colonization, mostly Catholic. But the owner of this house is Pentecostal. After all those blessings, the activity apparently calmed down a bit, but it never fully stopped. The spirit I've started calling the slack-mouthed lady still shows up from time to time. Let me tell you about one of the older encounters. This happened around 2009, late at night. My partner, let's call her Lila, has a younger sister. I'll call her Mara. Back then, Mara was sleeping in the room with the windows facing the notoriously haunted balcony, or terrace, really. She was lying in bed, just unwinding, the way you do when you're half scrolling on your phone or just staring into space. At some point, she glanced toward the window. And there, pressed against the glass, was the same face I saw the other night. Mouth slack and slightly open. Long, straight black hair framing this unnaturally pale face. And she wasn't just looking in the window. She was locked on to Mara, like she was staring straight through her. Before Mara could even react, before she could scream or move or anything, the figure phased through the window. That's how she describes it, and grabbed her upper thigh. Not a tap, not a brush, a full, hard grip. Mara jolted away with that instinctive kind of panic your body goes into when something is wrong and you don't understand it yet. And just as suddenly as the woman had appeared, she was gone. No fading out, no walking away. 1 second there, next second, not. The whole thing lasted only a heartbeat, but it left Mara completely shattered. She ran downstairs, sobbing and shaking. The whole family woke up, rushing to her, trying to calm her down. They ended up staying together downstairs that night. Lights on, TV playing some random show just for the noise. Nobody really slept much. The next morning, someone noticed a dark mark on Mara's upper thigh, right where she said the woman had grabbed her. It wasn't just some faint smudge either. It was a hand-shaped bruise, darker in the center, a deep purplish blotch with red spreading out toward the edges. It honestly looked like someone had hit her there. Hard. That incident was serious enough that the family decided to request one of the blessings for the house. That was one of the 5. The house itself has this split personality. Downstairs feels completely normal, bright, lived in, almost comforting. You'd never guess anything strange had ever happened here. Upstairs is a different story. Every encounter I've heard about so far happened up there. The hallway at night feels wrong. Not like, boo, haunted house wrong, but like the air is thicker than it should be. And I'm not someone who gets spooked easily. I'm not especially sensitive to paranormal stuff, and I usually write off creaks and shadows as just life. But the upstairs hallway? Yeah, that gets to me. I haven't stepped out onto the balcony at night yet. I've seen it from the doorway, and that was enough. Maybe eventually I'll go out there after dark, but honestly, I'm in no rush. There's one more person I'd love to hear from. The maid who's been living here the longest. I'll call her Auntie Lena. She's been in this house for years, often alone, and if anyone has stories, it's her. The problem is, she doesn't speak English, and I don't speak Ilocano. We mostly exchange smiles, gestures, little nods of respect. I know she's spiritual, the way a lot of older locals are. I can almost feel that she's carrying this quiet knowledge of the house that she just doesn't put into words easily. My only way to really talk to her is through Lila, who's fluent in both languages. And that's a lot to ask. Hey, can you translate while I ask the woman you've known your whole life about ghosts and traumas in the house you grew up in? It feels intrusive if I push too hard. So I'm leaving it as an open door. If the right moment comes, if Lila feels comfortable, if Auntie Lena seems open to it, then I'll ask a few questions. If not, I'll respect that. For now, I'm focusing on what I can do. I'm working on the camera setup, even if it's slow going with the cement walls and the logistics of buying decent equipment out here. I'm taking my time listening to Lila's stories when she's ready to share them. I'm paying attention to how the house feels, especially upstairs, especially at night. And I'm trying to piece together who or what the slack-mouthed lady might be, while also reminding myself that this is still someone's home, not just a ghost story. So, I always feel a little shy telling this story, but I promise you, it's true. Back when I was around 14, we were living in this small town in the Philippines, in an old house my grandparents left to us. This was maybe 3 years before my mom, Elena, passed away. My mom used to tell us that she felt off in that house. Not just creepy old house off, but like somebody was there with her when no one actually was. She'd say, "I keep seeing someone walking past me, just here," and she'd point to the edge of her vision. But when I look, no one's there. At first, we kind of joked about it. You know, maybe it's just your imagination, Ma, that kind of thing. But it wasn't just her. Every now and then, visitors would say things like, "I thought someone just passed behind me," or "I felt like someone was standing in the hallway." They'd laugh it off, but you could tell it bothered them. Because of all that, my mom decided to call this local healer. People here just called him Mang Rodel. He came over one afternoon with a small bag of things: incense, some oils, and these tiny folded paper prayers. I still remember the smell of the smoke filling the house. He walked from room to room, burning incense, mumbling prayers under his breath. Then he folded these little papers with symbols and prayers written on them and tucked them over every doorframe: bedrooms, bathroom, kitchen, even above the main door. He told my mom, "Just leave these here, don't remove them." And for a while, things felt calmer. Or maybe we just wanted to believe that. Then my mom passed away. After she was gone, I went through this phase where I didn't want to be superstitious at all. I told myself, it's just an old house. All of this is in our heads. One day, while cleaning, I looked up at those yellowing little paper charms and thought, these don't do anything. So I climbed up on a chair and took them all down, every single one. About a week later, something happened. I remember waking up in the middle of the night because I heard laughing. Not full-on loud laughter, more like a child giggling and the sound of light footsteps, like someone jumping or skipping around in the hallway. My bedroom door was open, facing the kitchen. The kitchen light was on, so the rest of the house was kind of dim, but not completely dark. I squinted toward the doorway, still half asleep. And that's when I saw her. There was a girl standing in the doorway, just inside the kitchen. She was small, about the height of my younger sister Mira, and she was wearing this plain white dress, like a simple nightgown. Her hair was a short bob, but longer than Mira's at the time, so in my sleepy brain I just thought, oh, it's Mira. She got a haircut or something. She was just standing there, watching me. I couldn't see her face clearly because my eyes were half closed, but I could make out her outline. Her head tilted a bit, like she was curious. So, being dumb and sleepy, I stuck my tongue out at her. She giggled, a soft, playful laugh, exactly like my sister's when she was teasing. I rubbed my eyes properly, blinked, and looked again. She was gone. The doorway was empty. The light in the kitchen was still on. The house was quiet. And suddenly, I was very, very awake. It was completely dark outside. I checked the clock. 3:07 a.m. That's when this heavy feeling dropped into my stomach. I hurried, did my business as fast as I could, and pretty much ran back to bed. I pulled the blanket over my head like a little kid and told myself, "You were dreaming. It's nothing. Just sleep." The next morning, I told my older sister Leah what happened. I expected her to freak out with me, but she just kind of shrugged. "Maybe you were still half asleep," she said. "You know how dreams and real life can mix." I didn't feel like arguing, so I let it go. After a few days, I stopped thinking about it. Life went on. Then, a few weeks later, Leah woke me up early one morning. It was already light outside, maybe past 5 a.m. She shook my shoulder and said, "Hey, wake up. I need to ask you something." I was grumpy and confused. "What? What is it?" She looked serious. Too serious. "Is this how the girl laughed?" Then she did it. She imitated the laugh, this high, playful, almost teasing giggle. And I swear to you, it was the exact same laugh I'd heard that night. My whole body went cold. I just stared at her. "Why are you asking me that?" That's when she told me her story. She said she'd woken up earlier that morning because she heard someone jumping in the living room, right outside her bedroom. The sound was light, like a small child hopping from one spot to another. She remembered what I'd told her weeks before about the girl in the doorway. So instead of getting up to check, she squeezed her eyes shut and stayed completely still, pretending to be asleep. Then she heard it, the giggling. At first, it was a little farther away, like near the living room. Then the sound got closer and closer, until it felt like the source of the laughter was right beside her bed. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't move. She said she just pulled her blanket up to her chin and hoped it would stop. But it didn't. The giggling turned louder, more hysterical, like whoever it was found this all very funny. Then she felt the bed shake. Not a small vibration, but like someone was grabbing the edge of the mattress and rattling it. Leah said it would stop for a few minutes, and she'd tell herself, "Okay, it's over, it's fine." And then it would start again, giggling, the bed shaking, over and over. She was so terrified she didn't even scream. She said after a while, she got too tired to be scared and just wanted it to end so she could sleep. Finally, after what felt like forever, the giggling stopped. Then she heard something else, pots and pans banging in the kitchen, like someone was playing with them or throwing them around. That's when she finally yelled, "Papa!" and called for our dad, Paolo. By then, the sky outside was starting to lighten. It was around 5 a.m. Dad got up, checked the living room and the kitchen, but everything was in its place. No chairs moved, no pots on the floor, nothing broken. The only thing that was off was Leah, shaking, pale, and on the verge of tears. Right after that, she came to my room, woke me up, and asked if the laugh she heard was the same as the one I'd heard before. And it was. Exactly the same. But here's the part that still gets to me. Our area is actually mentioned in local history books as a place where a lot of people died during World War II. There were stories that the fields behind our house were once used to bury bodies, that soldiers and civilians were killed there. Old people in the neighborhood still talk about it sometimes, especially around All Souls Day. I don't know what we saw or heard. I still don't like calling it a demon or anything like that because it makes it feel too big, too powerful. Maybe it was a restless spirit. Maybe it was the echo of some child who once lived or died there. Maybe it was something else entirely. All I know is that after those nights, we didn't sleep the same way in that house again. And I never should have taken down those paper prayers without a second thought. Even now, when I hear a child laughing in the middle of the night on TV or from a neighbor's house, just for a second, I'm back in that dark hallway, looking at the kitchen light, and seeing a small girl in white standing silently in the doorway, watching me. Hi. I'm just going to talk to you like we're sitting in the same room, okay? I'm 17 now, but all of this started when I was about 9. Back then, my family still lived in this very old house, around a century and a half old. I'm the only one who insisted on keeping some of the old furniture, these 2 massive wooden wardrobes around my bed, and an antique vanity with a beautiful oval mirror. My mom has always refused to hang the mirror up on the wall. She just says, "It gives me a bad feeling," and leaves it leaning against the inside of the wardrobe. This house has seen a lot of people come and go. There were births in what is now my brother's room, and at least 1 death in mine. I've always kind of felt that. When things really started, I was in 5th grade. My grandmother, let's call her Elise, was going through this horrible divorce from my grandfather. She fell into a deep depression. She'd stay up late watching really dark, morbid stuff. During a school vacation, I stayed at her apartment for a week. One night, when it was just the 2 of us, she put on this playlist of true paranormal videos. I told her I was scared, but she laughed it off and said, "Come on, you're brave. Watch with me." She didn't force me in a violent way, but she pressed and pressed until I gave in. Those images got burned into my brain. Even now, if I close my eyes, I can still see some of those scenes. After I went back home, I couldn't sleep the same way again. I kept my lamp on for at least 3 months. I'd lie there, staring at the door, heart racing. And then, I started seeing him. Near my bedroom door, just a few meters away from my bed, there was this small figure. A little boy, but only as a dark shadow, like the outline of someone that the light somehow missed. And it wasn't like I saw a face or clothes or anything. It was just this knowing. I always say, I saw and I just knew. I knew he wasn't trying to hurt me. Harmless, curious maybe. So after a while, I stopped panicking. I'd see that shadow at the door once in a while, whisper, "Good night," under my breath, and eventually fall asleep. For a long time, there were just little things, feelings, presences, sounds I couldn't quite explain. Then, during lockdown, I had my first big experience in the house. Picture this: all my windows closed, no draft, door shut, no fan, no AC. I was sitting on my bed scrolling on my phone, and on a shelf in front of me there was this foam dart, like the refill kind my brother used for his toy guns. Suddenly, it started to move. Not fall, move. One side lifted up, and the dart began swinging left to right, like a compass needle searching for north. I froze. Then I did that thing where you blink really hard, like maybe your brain will reboot. It didn't stop. It just kept gently swinging. I grabbed my phone and started recording. Of course. I took the dart, put it in different places, watched it lie there normally, then put it back where it had been. And again, it started moving. When I showed the video to my mom, she shrugged and said I must have bumped the shelf or something. She didn't believe me. For a few months after that, everything seemed quiet. But then, in less than a year, my mom, my brother, and I each lost something very personal, in really weird ways. My mom left a pair of earrings on her nightstand, these small gold ones she loved. In the morning, they were gone. She turned the entire room upside down, under the bed, between the boards, in the drawers. Nothing. I also lost something of mine. I think it was a little pendant I used to wear all the time. I remember the feeling more than the exact object. That shock of, but I always put it right here. I should tell you, I'm Catholic. I don't get to Mass as often as I'd like, but faith has always been a part of my life. At a Catholic camp a couple of years ago, during Mass, I was staring at a candle near the altar. The flame suddenly looked different, larger, brighter, with this strange softness around it. It didn't take on a human shape or anything, but again, I saw, and I just knew. I knew it was my guardian angel. I saw that same presence again, months later, in the flame of a candle I was given at Christmas. It was like the light itself was aware of me. I've always been sensitive to that kind of thing, even before I really believed it could be real. But about a year ago, everything intensified. My bedroom door, for example. When I'm in my room, it has this habit of slowly opening by itself. Not with a creak or a slam, just the handle turning, and then the door gliding open. If someone else uses my room, though, it stays perfectly shut. My mom even commented once, "Funny, your door never does that with me." And I had to force a laugh. When I'm home alone, I hear doors slam. I get up to check and there's no draft, no open windows, nothing that would explain it. Then in 2024 and 2025, I lost more of my belongings the same way. Always kept in the same place, then suddenly gone. Months later, while I was packing for a vacation, I climbed up on a chair to reach this old suitcase in the attic, a faded blue one that used to belong to my brother. The attic's been renovated. It's basically a second floor now, but we rarely go up there. I opened the suitcase to see if it was usable, and inside the lining, were several of my missing things. Tucked in like someone had carefully hidden them. A bracelet, a ring, a small rosary. I just stared at them, my skin prickling. No one had touched that suitcase in years. Another night, I was watching a movie in the living room. We have these two heavy sliding doors that separate the living room from the hall that leads to the upstairs bathroom. They're so heavy, I can barely move them alone. Suddenly, they slammed open and then shut again. Fast. Violent. I remember the sound echoing in my chest. There was no one there. Not long after that, I went on vacation with my family to an island, Martinique. That's where I had my first sleep paralysis. That night, the electricity kept cutting out. Lights flickering, the TV turning off, coming back on. And somewhere in the house, a phone kept ringing and ringing, even when no one was calling. It was this shrill, old-fashioned ringing that made my nerves buzz. I'm terrified of the dark, but I told myself, okay, you can do this. And I went to unplug the phone. As I reached for it, my mom appeared from the hallway. She'd heard it too and had come to do the same thing. We laughed nervously, unplugged it, and went back to bed. As I started to drift off, I felt this heavy pressure all over my body. My chest, my arms, my legs. It was like the air thickened. Then I had this nightmare. I was trapped in a folding bed, the kind that closes in on itself. The mattress and frame were pressing inward, crushing me. I woke up, or I thought I did, but I couldn't move. I was lying on my back. I couldn't scream. My mouth wouldn't open. My body wouldn't respond. And at the foot of my bed stood a figure. It was blindingly white, surrounded by a yellow halo of light, so bright it hurt. No clear face, but it felt intelligent, focused on me. And again, I saw. and I just knew. The figure moved toward me, then shifted to my left, heading toward the opening of my mosquito net. Just as it was about to reach it, I jerked awake a second time, gasping. This time I could move, and I burst into tears. I told my mom everything. For the first time, she really believed me. Later that year, we went on a family retreat to Lourdes with a community that organizes pilgrimages. We stayed in this run-down, overpriced little hotel. The moment I stepped into the room I was sharing with my brother, let's call him Lucas, I felt wrong. The air felt thick, and I had this deep unease in my stomach. The first night, it was just small noises, taps from the bathroom, like someone walking around. I told myself it was just the pipes. The second night was different. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I feel the slightest shift in my mattress if my cat jumps on it. This was like that, except 1,000 times heavier. In the middle of the night, I felt the mattress beside me sink down, as if something big and heavy sat down right next to me. My body literally rolled a little toward that side. Weirdly, I didn't feel emotion at first. I was too stunned. Then I tugged lightly at the covers, and as soon as I pulled, the weight lifted. When I let go, it came back. This happened more than once. I knew it wasn't Lucas. He was in the other bed, breathing deeply in his sleep. There was clearly no one beside me. The next day, I went to a talk by a priest on the occult. I didn't know it was going to hit so close to home. He described different forms of demonic influence and the symptoms people sometimes report. Presence in a room, unexplained noises, sleep paralysis, obsessions, strange losses of objects, a mix of spiritual experiences and fear. As he spoke, memory after memory flicked on in my mind, like someone was turning on lights in a hallway. When the talk was over, I went to speak to him. I told him as much as I could without breaking down. He listened quietly and then suggested something called the Prayer of the Brothers, a kind of intercessory prayer. He also recommended I pray the Canticle of Zechariah each night and turn often to Mary. So I did. For about 3 weeks, I prayed that canticle before going to bed. I also started praying to Mary every night, just talking to her the way I'm talking to you now. During one of those Prayer of the Brothers times, a woman put her hand gently on my shoulder and prayed over me. At one point she said, "Lord, visit her tonight. Show her you're with her." That evening, when I went to close the window, a butterfly flew in. Not a moth, a butterfly. Bright white, almost glowing in the dim light. I tried to guide it back outside several times, but it kept circling the room and then coming back to rest near my bed. Finally, it landed on the wall right beside my pillow. That night, I slept 6 hours instead of my usual 4. For me, that was huge. And over the next few days, I kept sleeping a little better, a little deeper. The night terror didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. When we got back home, I still occasionally felt something sit or lie down beside me, but it felt lighter somehow, less oppressive. One night, as I was drifting off, I saw something like a transparent sheet, almost like mist, floating down and gently laying itself over me. It felt protective, like someone was tucking me in. Then we went camping as a family. At first, everything was normal. We set up the tent, laughed, argued over who had forgotten what. Then my period started, and the pain was sharper than usual. So sharp that my dad had to help half carry me to my bed in the bungalow. The thing is, there was no second floor. Just the roof. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, as if someone was pacing directly over my head. This happens sometimes in our attic at home, too. Around the time I go to bed, I'll hear steps above my room, even when everyone is downstairs. Eventually, I drifted off. And again, I woke up in that horrible, familiar state. I was facing the wall this time, on my side. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I tried to scream for my parents, but nothing came out. Behind me, the mattress dipped down, like someone lay down right up against my back. I felt the weight, the presence, and this time the fear was even worse than in Martinique. My whole body hurt. My legs, my arms, my spine. Not like cramps or normal pain, more like being squeezed from the inside. If there was any mercy that night, it was that I didn't see anything. If I had, I honestly think I would have lost it. After that, the rest of the trip went by without anything unusual. But when we came back home, things started happening again. Objects falling in my room when no one is near them. My door refusing to stay closed when I'm inside. Footsteps in the attic. And lately, voices. This is the part that's hardest to explain. It's like I've developed a sort of gift, if you can even call it that. When I look at some people, I hear this soft stream of words in the back of my mind, like someone is whispering about them. Not gossip or anything, more like information. Sometimes it's about their behavior, like, he's angry most of the time, but it's really fear. Or, she loves helping people because she's terrified of being abandoned. Sometimes I glimpse flashes of what they've been through. Not whole scenes, just impressions. It doesn't happen with everyone, and I don't go looking for it. It just arrives. I don't know how to control it yet. My mom and Lucas are also pretty sensitive to people. They can feel when someone is lying or when someone has a heavy past. But they don't see or experience the other stuff. Apparitions, sleep paralysis, objects moving. That seems to be just me. During the retreat, there was a woman sharing her testimony about becoming a consecrated virgin at a Marian vigil. As she spoke, I suddenly saw a violet orb around her, like an aura extending a little beyond her shoulders. It was peaceful, soft, almost gentle to look at. On that same trip, I started seeing auras again around a few people, 3 or 4 in total. Most of them were a light yellow. With that woman, though, with the violet light, I had this very strong feeling that Mary was close to her that night. All of this started when I was 9 or 10. I'm 17 now, and I feel myself getting more and more sensitive, like the volume is being turned up, and I don't know where the knob is to turn it down. Deep inside, I have this belief, or fear, that when I was younger, I opened some kind of door. Maybe through fear, maybe through those videos, maybe through my obsession with the paranormal after that. And something stepped through. Maybe more than one thing. Some of it feels protective, some of it feels neutral, but some of it feels like it wants to take hold of me. Since all of this became more intense, my health has gone downhill too. I've developed IBS, PCOS, vitiligo, issues with my teeth, awful allergies. My body feels weaker. Some days it feels like I'm fighting on 2 fronts, physically and spiritually. So, yeah, those are my paranormal stories, at least the main ones. I know it's a lot. I know some people would say it's all in my head, or just anxiety, or just sleep problems. Maybe some of it is. Maybe not all of it. What I do know is that what I see and feel is very real to me. Because I'm tired. I'm scared. And I don't really know how to handle it anymore. I just don't want whatever I might have let in years ago to take me away from who I really am. Okay, so let me just take a deep breath and walk you through this, like you're sitting here at my kitchen table with me. This all started back in 1994, in this little rental house my husband Eric and I had moved into. I was pregnant with our second child at the time, our daughter, and we were getting ready to go to a birthday dinner at my mom Carol's place. It was early evening. I was in the living room, big as a house, standing over our old love seat, folding laundry into these little piles. Socks here, baby clothes there, towels on the arm of the couch. Eric was in the kitchen behind me, rinsing off the silverware in the sink. I had my back to him, but I could hear everything. The clinking of forks and spoons, the water running, him moving around. Now, you have to understand something about Eric. At that time, we had never been the arguing type. He was this quiet, gentle guy. In all our years together, he had never raised his voice, never raised a hand, never even slammed a door in anger. We were just good, solid. We'd been in a good mood all day, joking around, getting ready to go see my family. So I'm there, folding tiny onesies and little t-shirts, and after a minute or two, I realize I don't hear the water or the silverware anymore. It's just quiet behind me. I figured he'd finished and was drying his hands or something. And then, out of nowhere, I hear this sharp whoosh through the air, like something cutting through it, and a split second later, bam! Followed by this weird, vibrating, bouncing kind of sound. I look down. There's a big kitchen knife. Not a little paring knife, I mean a full-on chef's knife, sticking blade first into the cushion of the love seat, right between my feet. If I had taken even half a step back, it would have gone into my leg or worse. It was buried in the cushion. I froze. My brain was trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. I turned around, slowly, and looked at Eric. He was standing there at the sink, but he wasn't rinsing dishes anymore. He was facing me. His hands were at his sides, clenched into fists. His jaw was tight, and the look on his face, it was pure hate, rage. His face was getting redder and redder, and he was breathing hard, in and out, like he'd just sprinted up a hill. I remember thinking, this is not my husband. This is not the man I know. I said, Eric, what in the hell did you do that for? You could have killed me. Nothing. He didn't answer. Just stood there, fists clenched, staring at me with that angry, almost unfamiliar face. I repeated myself, louder this time. Why did you do that? Eric, why would you throw that? What is wrong with you? He still said nothing, just breathing, staring. At that point, I didn't even know what to do. I was scared, but I was also confused, and I wanted an answer. So I started walking toward him. As I got closer, I watched his hands slowly start to unclench. His breathing began to slow. The color in his face started to go back to normal. He turned back toward the sink, reached up, and turned the faucet off, like he was just now noticing the water was still running. I walked right up next to him and put my hand on his shoulder. I was shaking. My eyes were filling with tears because none of this made sense. He turned and looked at me, and suddenly he smiled, like his regular, gentle smile, and I could feel my face just crumple. I must have looked completely confused and hurt. I said, Eric, why did you do that? You threw a knife at me. Why? And he looks me dead in the eyes and goes, do what? He looked at me like I was speaking another language, like I just told him the sky turned green. His brows knitted together and he said, what are you talking about? I didn't throw anything. We went back and forth like that, me getting more upset, him looking more confused. I dragged him over and showed him the knife in the love seat. I pulled it out of the cushion to show him the slit it had made. He just kept shaking his head. I swear, I don't remember doing that. I didn't throw that. And I'm standing there, pregnant, with a knife in my hand, trying to make sense of a situation that has no sense. To this day, decades later, Eric does not believe he did it. He has no memory of that moment. None. And remember, this is a man who never so much as yelled at me. I need you to keep that in the back of your mind, because this was not the only thing that happened in that house. Now, rewind a little to right after we moved in. I was 19, young and naive. One night I had a little girls' night with a couple of my best friends. We were bored, wanted to do something spooky and fun, and someone pulled out a Ouija board. I knew better now, but back then, I thought it was just a silly game. We turned off most of the lights, lit a couple of candles, and started asking dumb questions. We didn't see anything dramatic happen right then. No planchette flying around or anything like that, so we laughed it off and put it away. But after a few weeks, things started. Little things at first. Strange noises, that knife incident with Eric, just a feeling. The house never felt quite settled after that night. I always tell people now, do not mess with those boards. I truly believe we opened some kind of door in that house, and I will never touch one again for as long as I live. Fast forward a few months. Same house. By this time, our baby girl Lily had been born, late September. Our son Noah was about 3.5, almost 4. They shared a bedroom. So picture their room. In the left corner as you walked in, we had Lily's crib. Diagonally across from her, in the opposite corner, was Noah's little toddler bed. Right next to his bed was a tiny wooden shelf, just big enough to hold a handful of those little golden books he loved. On the wall between the two beds, I'd hung a wicker basket with fake ivy in it, just a cute little decorative thing. One afternoon, I was in the living room again, and Lily was down for a nap in her crib. The house was quiet. All of a sudden, I heard this soft series of thuds, like something small and heavy dropping onto the floor one by one. Then I heard Lily start to stir and whine. I went down the hall and into their room, and I just stopped. On top of Lily, in her crib, were several of those little golden books that had been on the shelf across the room. A couple of books were scattered on the floor near her crib. The little shelf itself had fallen, lying on its side by Noah's bed. Now, there was no one else in the house. Noah was staying with my mom. It was just me and the baby. I tried to explain it away. Maybe the shelf had come loose from the wall, fallen, bounced, and somehow the books flew across the room? Maybe? It seemed weird, but I was more puzzled than scared at that point. I picked the books off of her, checked her over, put the shelf back, and went about my day, still trying to reason it out in my head. A day or two later, almost the same thing happened, but worse. This time, I didn't hear the little thuds. I just heard Lily suddenly start crying, that panicky little baby cry. I went in there and froze again. Again, no one else was home. No open windows, no fan strong enough to blow it off. Just, there it was. I was way more puzzled now, and I remember thinking, why does it keep landing on her? Why does it keep ending up on my baby? I still didn't jump straight to paranormal. I was trying so hard not to. Instead, I did what any young mom would do. I rearranged the room. I pulled Lily's crib over to where Noah's toddler bed had been, and I moved Noah's bed so it was on the same wall as her crib, side by side, away from that corner. The shelf moved, the basket moved. I tried to eliminate any way something could fall on her again. I really thought that would be the end of it. A couple of nights later, my brother Jason came over, like he did most weekends, to watch a movie with us. He was a movie buff, always bringing something new for us to see. It was around 11 p.m. Noah was spending the night at his grandma's house, and Lily was asleep in her crib in the bedroom. So it's just me, Eric, and Jason, sitting on the couch in the living room, lights dim, watching the movie. Out of nowhere, we hear this sound. At first, we kind of ignored it, thinking it was from the TV. But it kept going and got louder. A low, grinding sound, mixed with this cracking wood and snapping metal and plastic. It was such a strange combination of sounds that all three of us instinctively reached for the remote at the same time. Eric paused the movie. The sound kept going. We looked at each other, eyes wide, no one talking. It didn't sound like it was coming from one direction. It felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, inside the walls, under the floor, above us. Then suddenly, crash! And immediately after that, Lily's scream. I have never moved so fast in my life. None of us have. All three of us jumped up at the same time and bolted down the hallway. We were practically climbing over each other, clawing to get through the doorway first, because the sound of her screams, it sounded like she was being mauled. I'm not exaggerating. It sounded like something was hurting her. We reached her bedroom door, and what we saw is burned into my memory forever. Her crib, where we'd just moved it, was completely upside down in the corner. I don't mean it had tipped over onto its side. I mean the entire crib was flipped, legs in the air, the wooden frame twisted and bent in ways that didn't even make sense. Underneath that mess, trapped, were the mattress and the metal spring frame that usually hangs inside the crib. And I couldn't see my baby. I started screaming, just raw, panicked screaming. "Get her out! Get her out! Hurry up!" Eric and Jason rushed to the crib and started yanking at the wood, trying to lift it. But it wouldn't budge the way you'd expect. It was like it had been crushed in a car wreck or twisted by something way stronger than any of us. The metal was bent, the wood was splintered, and all the while Lily was underneath it, screaming. I can't tell you how long that went on. In reality, it was probably seconds, maybe a minute, but to me it felt like an eternity. My mind was racing. Is she bleeding? Are her bones broken? Is she being crushed right now while I'm just standing here? Finally, they managed to rip the frame apart enough and lift the crib up and away. Underneath, there she was, on her back on the floor, the mattress on top of her, the twisted metal spring frame on top of that. We pulled everything off her and I grabbed her, scooped her up off the floor, and ran back to the living room with her in my arms. The three of us just sat there, breathing hard, not talking. Nobody wanted to say out loud what we'd just seen. I was the first one to speak. I said, "We need to call 911. We need to get her checked out." Eric looked at me and said, "Okay, but what do we tell them? What do we say happened?" And that question just stopped me cold. What could we say? "Hi, yes, could you come over and examine our baby? Her crib flipped itself upside down and tried to crush her." How do you say that without someone assuming you're lying, that you're covering up abuse? I looked at Eric, then at Jason. They both just looked stunned. No one had any words, and I knew exactly what would happen if we brought paramedics in there and showed them that crib. They'd see twisted wood and bent metal, and a terrified baby, and parents with a story that made no sense. I pictured them taking her away from me. I pictured being accused of hurting my own child, and I just couldn't risk it. The only words I could get out were, "We're moving. We're done. We're moving." We didn't sleep there again. That night, we packed up what we could grab and went to Jason's house. The next morning, we started boxing up our things. We were out of that house as fast as we could manage. From that night on, I did not put Lily down for 3 months. I mean that literally. She slept on my chest, in my arms, on my lap. If I had to shower, someone held her. I was not about to put her alone in any crib or bed for a long, long time. Looking back now, so many years later, it still gives me chills. Lily is 31 now. She has no memory of any of this, of course, but she gets goosebumps when I tell her the story. She knows I don't exaggerate about things like this. The funny thing, well, not funny ha-ha, but you know what I mean, is that the 2 men who were there that night almost never talk about it. If I ask Jason what he thinks happened, he just shakes his head and says, "I'm not talking about that night." That's it. He won't go there. He shuts down completely. If I ask Eric, he'll say, "I don't know." And that's all I can get out of him. To this day, he doesn't remember throwing that knife. He doesn't want to talk about the crib. They both act like if they don't give the story words, maybe it isn't real. But I was there. I saw it. I heard it. I felt my baby's little body under my hands when I pulled her from that mess. I watched my gentle husband stand in our kitchen with hatred in his eyes and then wake up with no memory. I watched that crib twisted into a shape that no normal fall could have created. I know in my bones it was something paranormal. I know that whatever we messed with that night with the Ouija board opened a door in that house. I was too naive to understand it back then, but I do now. These days, I pray over every home we move into, every single one. I walk through the rooms and ask for protection, for peace. And I'm telling you, in all the years since we left that house, nothing like that has ever happened again. Not even close. People can believe me or not, that's up to them. But this is my story, and every time I tell it, I can still hear that grinding, snapping sound and my baby's scream, like it's happening all over again. So, let me take you back for a second. I was about 12, maybe almost 13, and I was having this sleepover at my old house. It was me, my 2 cousins, and our friend. For privacy, I'll call them my younger cousin Nora, my older cousin Riley, and our friend Mara. It started off super normal. We did exactly what a bunch of kids do at a sleepover. Too much junk food, bad horror movies we weren't really old enough for, whispering about crushes, making each other laugh until someone snorted. It was just that perfect, cozy chaos. The only weird thing that night was Mara. At one point, way later, she tells us, "Oh yeah, I heard knives moving in the pantry last night." But she says this the next morning, not in the moment. Not, "Hey guys, there's a knife ghost in the kitchen." No, she just casually drops that little horror nugget over breakfast. So the next morning, my parents head out to run errands. They're like, "We'll be back later, you 4 behave." And suddenly, it's just us alone in the house. We're in the living room, half watching some random show, half talking, when Mara kind of tilts her head and goes, "I hear it again. The knives, they're moving." Instant chills. We all look at each other like, "You're kidding, right?" But she's not joking. So what do a bunch of scared but overconfident kids do? We investigate, obviously. We troop into the kitchen like a tiny, unarmed SWAT team and check the knife block. Nothing looks out of place. No open doors, no broken windows, no creepy dude hiding under the table. Still, we're freaked out enough that we each grab a knife, like that was going to help us, but it made us feel better, and we walk around the house checking rooms. Nothing. No one. So we put the knives back, trying to act normal, and shuffle back to the living room. We kind of laugh it off, but you know when the vibe shifts? That cozy sleepover feeling is just gone. Everything feels just a little too quiet. A few minutes later, my younger cousin Nora suddenly sits up and goes, "Okay, now I heard it." We're like, "Heard what?" She points toward the kitchen. "The knives. Again." At this point, we're freaked out, but also a bit annoyed that the knives are the main character now. So we all go back to the kitchen. Nora looks at the knife block, squints, and says, "I didn't put my knife back there." She points to one specific slot. "I know I put mine on this side last time. It wasn't there." It sounds like such a tiny detail, but when you're scared, tiny details feel huge. So we pull that knife out and set it on the counter, kind of like a trigger object, like we'd seen in ghost shows. The plan was basically, if something's here, mess with this. That's when Riley kind of drifts toward the hallway. The hallway in that house connected the kitchen to the bedrooms. In the daytime, it was just a hallway. But right then, it felt like a tunnel in a horror game. Riley stops just at the doorway and says, very quietly, "There's something out here. It feels cold, dark." And she meant it. It wasn't dramatic. It was just matter of fact. She scoops up my cat Milo and walks a few steps into the hallway. The three of us are just standing in the kitchen watching her, not sure if we should follow. Milo is usually the chillest cat ever. Total purring, limp noodle cuddle bug. But the second Riley steps a little deeper into the hallway, Milo goes rigid. His eyes lock on this random patch of empty air, and he starts this low, rumbling growl I had never heard from him before. That's when my stomach dropped. Riley turns around and looks at me, and she's like, "Come here, just for a second. You need to feel this." So I walk over, very much against my own survival instincts, and the moment I step into the hallway with her, I get it. The air changes. It's like stepping into a freezer that's also somehow underwater. The light feels heavier, if that makes sense. My chest tightens, my ears ring, and I suddenly feel like I'm about to either faint or throw up. Maybe both. I remember just, I don't like this. I don't like this. Apparently, I went really pale because Nora and Mara grabbed my arms and basically yanked me back into the kitchen. The second I was out of the hallway, I could breathe again, but my legs were shaking. Riley is still staring down the hallway. She looks nervous, but also determined. She turns to us and says, "I'm going to close the door. If I don't come out in 5 minutes, come get me." And before we can talk her out of it, she closes the kitchen door between us and the hallway. So now it's just me, Nora, and Mara alone in the kitchen, staring at that closed door, clutching each other and listening for anything. We don't hear a thing. No footsteps, no voices, no thuds, just silence. Those 5 minutes feel like half an hour. I'm watching the clock on the microwave, heart pounding, counting down the seconds. When the 5 minutes are up, we look at each other like, we have to go in there, don't we? So we open the door and step back into the hallway. Riley is standing there, a few feet down, turned slightly away from us, just staring at the far end of the hall. Her face is completely blank. Her shoulders are tense, and her eyes look wrong. Like she's there, but she's not. You know when someone is spacing out, but this was more than that. She looked empty. We rush over to her and try to pull her back toward the kitchen. She's solid, like she's rooted to the floor. For a few seconds, she doesn't react to us at all. Then she starts talking. But the voice that comes out of her doesn't sound like her. It's her voice, but the rhythm, the tone, it's off. Too slow, too flat. She says, "My name is Lila. I was born in 1959. I died here. My father held me down and cut me. I bled, and no one came." I still remember every word of that, exactly like that. The three of us look at each other, totally frozen. We don't scream. We don't move. We just know that whatever is looking at us through her face is not Riley. Then she takes a step toward us. We panic and stumble backward into the kitchen, and instead of grabbing us, she reaches over and picks up that same knife we'd left on the counter. The trigger object. And that's it. That's our cue. All three of us bolt. We run out the front door, down the street, barefoot, crying, shaking, just full-on sprinting to Nora and Riley's house, which was only about a block away. We burst into their house and find their mom, talking over each other, trying to explain what happened. Riley's not Riley. She picked up a knife. The hallway, it was so cold. Their stepdad just kind of looks at us like, "Uh-huh, sure." You could tell he thought we were just being dramatic kids. But their mom? She believed us. Or at least, she believed we were scared, which honestly was enough. She grabs some sage and says, "Let's go." So we all walk back to my house together. I remember my hands feeling like ice, even though it was a warm day. When we get there, the front door is slightly open. Riley is walking out just as we arrive. She sees us and just goes, "Why do I feel so sick? What happened?" She doesn't remember picking up the knife. She doesn't remember introducing herself as Lila. The last thing she remembers is closing the kitchen door. Riley's mom doesn't waste any time. She goes into the house and starts walking from room to room, burning sage, saying out loud, "Anything dark, anything evil, you are not welcome here. You need to leave and never come back." We all stand clustered in the living room, watching her like she's performing surgery on the house. And here's the part that still messes with me. After that day, the house felt normal again. No more cold spots. No more strange noises. No more weird vibes in the hallway. My cat went back to being his usual lazy self. It was like something heavy had finally let go. And Mara? Once she stopped coming over, it all just quieted down. I can't prove anything, obviously, but I've always had this feeling that something had latched onto her first. Like it followed her in, saw a house full of loud, distracted kids and thought, "Perfect, time to play." Maybe it used her to stir everything up, to get our attention. Maybe it just waited for an opening. All I know is that it found one in that hallway, and it used Riley as a mouthpiece to tell us its story in the worst possible way. Even now, thinking about that day, it still gives me chills. Every time I walk down a quiet hallway alone, there's a tiny part of me that remembers how that air felt. Too cold, too heavy. And I can't help but wonder who else's story is waiting in the dark, just looking for a voice. So, I don't really know why I'm sharing all of this, but I guess a part of me hopes it might mean something to someone else, too. My very first strange experience was with my dog Daisy after she passed away. I was about 7 years old. We had a strict rule in the house: no dogs upstairs, ever. One night I'd gone to bed, lights off, tucked in like normal. I was just lying there, kind of half awake, when I heard it. Very clear, very real. The sound of a dog walking up the wooden stairs. You know that specific little rhythm of claws on wood? That. I remember thinking, that can't be right. Daisy's gone. And even when she was alive, she wasn't allowed up here. The footsteps reached the landing, and my bedroom door was slightly open. Then, instead of seeing a dog walk in, I watched this soft, silver mist drift through the doorway. It moved in a way that felt intentional, like it knew where it was going. The mist gathered beside my bed and slowly shaped itself, head, ears, body, into the outline of Daisy. I couldn't see every detail, but I knew it was her. She just stood there, by my bed, the way she used to when she wanted to be close but wasn't sure she was allowed. I didn't feel scared. I actually felt really calm, safe even. And then, just as gently as it appeared, the mist thinned out and faded away. The room was dark and quiet again, and I just lay there thinking, did that really just happen? My second big encounter, that one wasn't so comforting. When I got older, I got really into the occult for a while. I was reading all kinds of books, collecting crystals, weird little spirit stones, trying to contact something. I didn't really know what. I just wanted answers and a sense of control, I guess. Around that time, strange things started happening in the house. We'd hear footsteps in empty rooms. Little objects would be moved or fall for no reason. Doors that were shut would be slightly open. Small things, but enough to make you stop and think. No one really noticed except my mom and me. She would sometimes say, "Did you hear that?" And I'd just nod because I had. One night, I went to the bathroom like normal. Nothing dramatic, just minding my own business. I finished, washed my hands, and then looked up into the mirror. And there it was. Right behind me, over my shoulder, I saw a face. A woman's face. Completely pale, like all the color had been drained out of her, with long, dark hair and empty black eyes. No pupils, no whites, just black. She wasn't screaming or anything. She was just there, staring straight at me. I froze for a second, then instinct took over. I bolted. I ran out of the bathroom, out of the house, and I didn't go back inside for hours. I just walked around outside, shaking, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But the image of that face in the mirror was so sharp, so clear. I can still see it if I think about it too hard. The third experience was different. It involved other people, in a way that made it harder to brush off. I went to this drop-in group seance one evening. Nothing fancy, just a small group in a rented hall above a cafe, with a medium leading the session. I didn't say much about myself, and nobody there really knew anything about me. At one point, the medium looked around the room, then his eyes locked onto mine. He went very quiet and said, "There's a very tall man standing behind you. He says you should stop riding motorbikes. If you don't, you're going to break your back." Then the medium said, "He's showing me a picture. A young boy holding a big fish. The boy's wearing a red shirt and a faded green cap, and he's standing in an old wooden rowboat." I just stared at him, because I knew that picture. My grandfather, who was really tall, almost 2 meters, had taken that photo when I was a kid. I'm in this little boat, grinning, holding a fish, red shirt, old green cap. That picture used to hang in our hallway. I didn't say anything at the seance, but inside I was shaken. Part of me was excited, part of me was scared, and part of me was wondering if the very tall man was my grandfather, trying to tell me something. Life went on. I eventually moved to a different place, and for a long time, nothing happened. No footsteps, no shadows, no faces in mirrors. Years went by quietly. I started telling myself it had all been in my head. Maybe childhood imagination, maybe a stressed brain. It was easier to believe that than to accept that something unseen might actually be out there. Then, a couple of years ago, things got rough again. I slipped into this sort of low-grade depression. Nothing dramatic from the outside, but inside I felt heavy. A lot of thoughts about life, purpose, whether anything really mattered. I was functioning, but I was empty. And that's when the weird stuff started happening again. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway when I knew I was alone. I'd catch shadows in my peripheral vision, like someone walked past a doorway, but when I looked, no one was there. I constantly felt like I was being watched, especially in the evening when the house was quiet. The kids' toys would turn on by themselves. A little plastic piano would start playing a tune in the middle of the night. A toy car would rev its engine when no one was near it. Almost always when one of us, either me or my partner, was alone in the house. My depression got worse. I lost about 10 kilos. I didn't really recognize myself, physically or mentally. One day, my wife came home carrying a Bible. For us, that was unusual. We weren't religious in any serious way. We'd never really talked much about faith beyond a vague, "Maybe there's something." She just handed it to me and said something like, "I don't know why, but I feel like you should have this." I was desperate enough to try anything, so I started reading. Slowly at first, a page here and there. Then I started praying. Not fancy prayers, just talking. I remember saying, "Jesus, if you're real, I need help. I can't do this on my own. Please come into my life." It wasn't like a movie moment with angels singing or light pouring down from the ceiling. But over the next months, things started to shift. The heaviness began to lift, bit by bit. My appetite came back. I gained weight again, about 14 kilos. I wanted to be alive. I wanted to be here with my family. And the strange activity in the house? It faded. The footsteps, the shadows, the toys buzzing to life on their own, it all quieted down. Then I had this dream. Calling it a dream almost doesn't feel right, because it felt more real than ordinary life. In the dream, I was in a forest unlike any I've ever seen. The trees had these pink and purple leaves, gently glowing, and there was a small, clear river winding down through the middle of it. The air felt warm and peaceful, like everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. I was just standing there, taking it in, when suddenly someone was in front of me. It was my best friend, Mark. He smiled, walked up to me, and pulled me into a hug. I could feel the hug, the warmth of it, the weight of his arms around me. It didn't feel like a normal dream where things are fuzzy. It felt physical. He looked me in the eyes and said, very clearly, "Everything is going to be all right. You just have to trust it." That was it. Simple words, but they went straight through me. I woke up immediately after. I remember lying there in bed, heart racing, with this strange mix of peace and shock. The room felt different, like something had been rearranged inside me. The whole thing felt more real than most of my waking memories. Even now, I can still picture the colors of those trees, the sound of the water, the brightness in his eyes. I'm still not completely sure what to make of all of this. Maybe some of it is just the mind playing tricks. Grief, stress, fear, and hope taking strange shapes. Maybe some of it is more than that. What I do know is this. Those experiences changed me. The dog at my bedside, the woman in the mirror, the warning from the tall man, the footsteps, the toys, the Bible, and that forest where my friend told me to trust. All of it left me with this quiet sense that we're not as alone as we think we are. And even on the days when doubt creeps back in, I still hold on to his words. Everything is going to be all right. You just have to trust it.